I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone, to our extended May 10th budget workshop board meeting. We start out with approval of today's agenda. We have some discussion. Is that your comment on the agenda?
My comment on a gnat.
Was a nap.
Move to approve.
Okay. And second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Public comment. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons desiring an opportunity to address the board on any matter not on this agenda and over which it has jurisdiction. Speakers are limited to 3 minutes. Persons wishing to include their verbatim remarks in the official record shall submit same in writing. Members of the audience are asked to avoid engaging in any behavior that disrupts the orderly conduct of the meeting. Speakers are asked to state their name and address for the record prior to making a presentation. So we have one sheet here, Mr. Fiddler. Nick, welcome. Good to see you again today.
Chair Hunter, board members, Nick Fiddler, Public Works Director for the City of Bakersfield. Again, just want to come before you and thank you for the opportunity you've given us with the ADA improvements to several bus stops. Just to report back to you, we are continuing to move through both the PT MISIA and TDA funds well over 75% complete. Unfortunately, the weather has slowed us down a little bit more than what we had anticipated. We do anticipate to get the remainder of those completed within the next few weeks as the weather continues to warm up. We do have some significant paving projects that you will see coming about that will improve a lot of the bus stop locations where the pavement is significantly deteriorated and is causing some troubles for the buses accessing those stops. With the weather warming up, we anticipate those to take place again probably within the next 2 to 3 weeks. The major projects being on Truxton Avenue, just north of on Chester Avenue, just north of California and just north of Truxton Avenue. Again, looking forward to a potential opportunity for next fiscal year to continue our improvements along the bus routes, stops for ADA improvements. And we also believe that with the money that we receive from both PT MISIA and TDA, that we're going to be able to achieve more stops than what we originally anticipated for the program. So been very successful, great partnership, combination of funds from Current Call, GET, and the city to achieve a great collaboration to improve access to both GET and citizens and the city of Bakersfield citizens. So again, appreciate that and look for any potential opportunities in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate you coming and giving us today's report. In fact, I had a conversation with City Manager Tandy this morning at the high-speed rail meeting, and we discussed possible futures, continued future collaboration. We're hoping we can do something along those lines. And I did express the board's appreciation to Mr. Tandy on the response time. You know, the work you folks did was really excellent in terms of responding quickly, getting the work done.
Well, I appreciate that, and if if we didn't have the strange weather patterns we've had this year, we would have been complete by now. So that is our target goal, is to get this money spent as fast as possible to put it to good use to our citizens.
Thank you.
Yes, I was just wanted to see. I came in late, so I don't know about the EITV. You guys decided to erase the pairs or not? But that's on the agenda. And also off the agenda, it was brought to my attention. I'm not saying who, but it was brought to my attention. If you guys can put the 2 weakest routes on the weekends and combine them together for weekends only, and that would be the Route 47 and the Route 84, and combine it and make a brand new route. So I just see what you guys think about that.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Piper. And moving on to the minutes of our last meeting, April 19th. Any discussion on those minutes?
Motion to approve?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Accounts payable check disbursements for the period.
Move to approve.
Approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, fare box recovery ratio. Ms. Karen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Over a period of time, we've had ongoing discussions about our need to balance our budget every year, and that part of doing that is demonstrating that we can meet a 20% fare box recovery ratio. In fact, we just received our TDA triennial audit, and there was only a single finding in it, and that was that in 2014 and 2015 we did not meet our fare box recovery ratio. So there's been discussions, and this evening or this afternoon we have Aaron Hakimi from KernCog here to hopefully answer questions and straighten out, so we all have a good understanding of how the fare box recovery ratio works.
Okay. Welcome, Aaron. Thank you for coming.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chairman, and board member. I'm going to have hopefully just a little conversation about what KernCog does and the TDA, and then at any time you can answer questions. I had a conversation with Ellie a few months ago that I think prompted this. Unfortunately, he's not here.
Well, he'll be here in a few minutes. I received a text and he's on his way.
Okay, so I'll just start with a little background of what KernCog's role is in transportation. What the metro. First of all, KernCog is the metropolitan planning organization for Kern County. Excuse me. There are 18 MPOs in California, and there are metropolitan planning organizations all throughout the country. It's a federal designation. We also have a state designation as the Regional Transportation Planning Organization for Kern County. KernCog is made up of a board member from each of the 11 cities in Kern County and 2 board members from the county of Kern. So there's 13 full voting members. There's also a voting member from Golden Empire Transit that votes on all transportation-related issues, a voting member from Caltrans that also votes on transportation issues only, and a voting member from the military bases in Eastern Kern. So 11 incorporated cities and the county, two members from the county make up KernCog. Okay, so how does KernCog relate to transportation? What we do at KernCog is every 4 years we come up with a long-range vision for how transportation will come about and develop over the next 20 years. That's called our Regional Transportation Plan. The public plays a part in that, your organization plays a part in that, and our board members play a part in that. That's a federal requirement that we do that every 4 years. We look out at least 20 years and talk about how transit is going to develop, how highways are going to develop, how in some cases airports, other forms of mass transportation. It's a bottoms-up approach, and many of you have been involved in that process over the years. Part of following the federal long-term transportation process is essentially a handshake or a contract with the federal government that says if you accept federal funds, you agree to participate in the transportation planning process. So, 30 years ago, before there was, or maybe 40 years ago, before there was a transportation planning process, if I wanted to build a road between my house and Karen's house because our kids went to school together, well, I could probably do that without much problem. But today, because the transportation process is a public process and from a ground up process, I can't just build whatever road I want, and you can. In some cases, well, I'm going to have a bus route between James Hunter's house and Cindy's house because that's what we want to do. It opens the process, makes it a public process, and allows for public comment. And the same goes for the money for the roads. I can't build a road wherever I want just because I want to. So so I went over how Kern COG was made up, the long-term transportation process, 20 years out. Kern COG also is the maker or processor of the short-term transportation projects. That's where we look only 4 or 5 years out. That's called the Federal Transportation Improvement Program. That's how we implement our long-range transportation plan. And many of your projects, when you buy buses or do capital investments using federal funds, not many, all your projects that where you use federal funds are part of what we call the FTIP. That's also a public process. We hold public meetings. In fact, just last month we hold another a meeting where we talk about advancing projects, delaying projects, substituting projects. A great example of how this board was recently involved in that is you had plans for some significant capital projects that ultimately needed to be delayed because of what was going on with the high-speed rail. So you went through a process where you moved that in the Federal Transportation Improvement Program, and you subsequently moved it in the long-term plan. So instead of building that last year, you're going to push it out a few years. Okay, a little bit more about Kern COG, and this is all going to be relevant here in a sec. So there are 11 cities and the county. Of those 11 cities, 9 of them operate transit systems, right, Bob? So the only cities that don't operate transit systems are Maricopa, which is a very small city on the west side of only about 1,000 people, and the city of Bakersfield. The city of Bakersfield used to operate a transit system until early 70s when Golden Empire Transit was formed. Now Golden Empire Transit operates all transit for the city of Bakersfield. So our board is made up of quite a few transit operators. They all understand, not all of them, everyone except for Bakersfield and Maricopa, what it's like to run a transit system. Granted, none of those transit systems are as large and nearly as complex or sophisticated as Golden Empire Transit. But all of our voting members, except for Maricopa and Bakersfield, understand the TDA process, understand fare box recovery ratios, and to be completely upfront, some of them, what's the right word, are challenged to meet those ratios. Not all of them, some of them do very well, but there's a handful of them, remember there's only 9 of them, that struggle to meet the fare box. And all of them except Delano have to meet only a 10% fare box ratio. Golden Empire Transit and Delano, right, are the only 2 that have to meet a 20% ratio because of your size. So the TDA money, that's Transportation Development Act, that Golden Empire Transit gets each year, which funds about 60 or 61% roughly, but the majority of your funding comes through Kern COG, through the TDA. It also funds all the other transit operators in the county. That's when staff here says we have to meet fare box ratio, that's state law. The money comes through Kern COG, and Kern COG is the one that monitors that progress. You see Mr. Snoddy comes to all your meetings. Yes?
When you said size, that's population of the city?
Yes.
Can you speak about that?
Well, a few years ago, Delano went over 50,000. That's the threshold between 10% fare box and 20%. So you and Delano are the only ones in the county that have to meet the 20% fare box. You are by far our best large operator. You're our only large operator that comes close to meeting your fare box. So Delano since they are a new large operator and have transitioned from meeting only just a few years ago, having to meet 10% to 20%, I'll be even more blunt, they have struggled to get anywhere close to 20%. You are by far the most sophisticated operator. All the other transit systems are very small. Some of them don't even involve fixed routes. Some of them are just dial rides. Someone wants a ride, they call up the city and say, hey, I need a ride to go to an appointment, and someone from the city comes and picks them up in a van. So I'm just trying to lay the foundation for the decision makers at KernCog understand the struggles of meeting the fare box. Go on to a few more items. So I mentioned that about 60 or 61% of your income comes from TDA, that comes through KernCog. You also get a good deal of federal funds. That doesn't necessarily come through KernCog, but KernCog is involved in the programming and the FTIP of those funds. KernCog has a very close relationship with Golden Empire Transit. Most of your funding comes through us. And your board members, as you know, 2 of them are appointed by the city of Bakersfield and 2 of them are appointed by the county of Kern. Those are voting members of KernCog. So we understand, we have a close relationship, and I like to think that it's a very good relationship. I have interactions with about 10 or 12 of the other COGs in the state, and we have one of the better relationships in the state with our transit operators. I don't know if it's the best. I don't think I have the ability to make that decision, but there are transit operators in the state, some that I know very well, that actively fight with their COG and are engaged in lawsuits between the COG and the county. So our relationship is a good relationship. We communicate openly. Our board, I think for the most part, understands how transit works, because all of them, except Maricopa and Bakersfield, operate transit systems. Other regions in the state are not like that. As an example, in Southern California, there are literally hundreds of incorporated cities in Southern California. Very few of them, if any of them, operate their own transit systems. So we're in a position where we're relatively small. Most of our board members understand what it's like to operate transit systems, and they understand the TDA process. Bob comes to all your meetings. All your audits are generally good. We perform audits. That's part of what KernCog does, and our responsibility to pass through that TDA money to you. Okay, I talked about short and long range planning. We also assist you with your short and long range planning. Now let me get into the meat of what I wanted to talk to you about, which is specifically TDA. I only think I have 5 copies of this, so if you can either share with the board members or if anyone else wants to see. And what I'm handing out to you is, Mr. Chairman, is a letter I sent to Karen about a week and a half ago about the specific exemptions to fare box recovery and the TDA guidelines. Actually, an excerpt from the TDA guidelines. The TDA guidelines are roughly 100 pages, and I have 5 or 6 guidelines here. So I laid the groundwork. First of all, let me state, you guys are doing a great job. As of last month, you were at, last quarter, you were at 21.53%. So you're exceeding your fare box by 1.5%. That's, you deserve a pat on the back for that. That's a big deal. KernCog sees all the transit operators in the county, and very few of them consistently exceed their fare box. So your staff and the board members, you deserve a pat on the back. Now I'm going to talk a little bit more about ways you can possibly increase ridership. Elliot has talked to me about, well, what happens if we do this and this and this? and I told Elliot and other board members that there are exemptions to that 20% fare box ratio, and that's what I handed out, and I want to go over those, and you're also, of course, welcome to read it for yourself. So there are specifically exemptions for, and this is something that you're under right now, when you, what's the right term, when you come up with a new system-wide update of routes, and you did that 2 years ago, you have an exemption for 3 years, right, Bob?
Well, it's 2 years.
Well, it's 2 years after
And,
after the fiscal year that you implement significant route changes, you have an exemption. So if you implement those route changes near the beginning of the fiscal year, you have the 2 fiscal years
Exactly.
after you implement where the 20% fare box ratio does not apply. So if you want to explore new routes that are possibly viable, and staff tells you that they're possibly viable, I'm not trying to suggest that you say, go out to very sparsely populated areas and use these exemptions as a way to go out to, say, a very small group of residents. But there are legal exemptions when you change routes. But you also need to keep in mind that you need to make wise business decisions. That there need to be enough people out there or businesses, and your staff understands that, and they often will tell you that, well, that probably will not generate the fare box that we think. And in most cases, they're right. I believe in my letter I talked about you extended hours a couple of years ago. It didn't turn out to produce the fare box that you required, so you scaled it back. Now there's other agencies that in Kern County that consistently don't meet fare box, yet don't make changes like you implemented a change when you saw that increasing hours to, I think it was 10 p.m. didn't produce the fare box that you thought you were going to get. Well, you scaled it back. Staff recommended scaling it back, and you did. There's other agencies in Kern County that have their fares, in my opinion, set too low and consistently don't meet fare box, yet even when given advice to make adjustments to their routes or adjustments to their fares, don't take that advice. In those cases, our board may take action against them and sanction them and take some of that TDA money away from that organization. Now, GET certainly doesn't fall into that category. We have good open communications. We talk regularly about changes. And there's never been a case that I'm aware of where GET has taken a position and just said, nope, we're not going to do that. We're not going to implement it. We're going to do what we want. Some of my comments to some of the board members were, I don't see a scenario where Kern COG is going to bring down the hammer on you if your fare box slips from 21 where it is now to 19 for a couple of quarters. You guys are very diligent about what you do. You're the most sophisticated operator. But I'm also trying, I don't want to discourage outside the box thinking. You should actively think about ways to have more riders, possibly use exemptions when they're to your advantage. If you think a new route or a new time might be advantageous to filling up the buses a little bit more, that's what those exemptions are there for. There's also exemptions in the law that can be used in the case of a labor dispute. If you have a labor dispute, then we're not going to hold you to your fare box. So I hope that helps to educate you a little. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
A couple of questions. Does the exemption apply to upgraded routes only or new routes as well? In other words, does that make sense? If we're modifying an existing route, upgrading it,
Increasing headways, you mean?
increasing headways or the time, in the case of where you change the time and then scale back the time. That was an upgrade or an update to an existing line, right?
As the agency that would have to interpret the law, I would say if you made changes like that, you would come to us and say, hey, we think this qualifies for an exemption if you needed one.
Okay.
In most cases, I think Kern Cog would go along. Okay, sure, give it a try, let's see.
Somewhere I thought I read that that does not apply to new routes. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I don't think.
There's no differentiation between a new route and an upgraded or updated route in terms of the exemption. Okay.
Yeah, not that I'm aware of.
I have a quick question, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
Thanks for coming and speaking to us, Aaron. We appreciate it. We thank you for providing Bob, at a lot of our meetings. He's come to some of our committee meetings and offered a ton of support, a ton of expertise when we've had some questions. I really thank you for coming. I asked that you be put on the agenda and come and talk to us, because I think the relationship between Kern Cog and GET, as I sort of mature on the board and my time goes on, is that we do have to work close together, and we appreciate the suggestions and the help with the studies and the oversight as well. And so today we have an important board meeting. We're going to talk about our budget for next year, and one of the and we're also going to talk about some route changes. And the route change is effectively doubling the route. We're going from an hour headways, 30-minute headways, right? So we're effectively putting twice as many buses in the same period of time than we normally would. Is that an okay way of thinking about it? And so our hope is that we have an increased ridership. I mean, that's what we're, I think our board has challenged the staff, in our strategic planning is, grow ridership, grow revenue. I mean, that's what and so this is what they've come back with. The challenge, though, is also before our board tonight is a perspective or a rate or a fare increase. And I personally struggled with this. We raised our fares last year in August, and we've seen a decline. There was a decline in ridership caused by that, among other things that we've discussed. And so my question is, we prepared a budget in two ways. At least I think that the staff provided that to the board, and that if we don't raise the fare, this is going to be our projected shortfall. And this is the projected fare box recovery ratio for next year. And that was hovering around 18.5%. Am I correct? And so my question to you is do you think that is a scenario, as we're expanding our service on our longest, most traveled route by 2, and then that if we decide not to raise the fare, is that an acceptable, and by not raising the fare, there's a very good shot that we were not going to meet our 20% fare box recovery issue. Is that a scenario that Kern Cog can handle for us for the next year?
Through the chairman, absolutely. There's generally a 1-year grace period before any kind of sanctions are implemented, and that's in the law. You can read it about it yourself. But your board is going to have tough decisions, and transit operators all throughout the country have that. If you raise fares too quickly or too much, ridership may go down. It is a balancing act, and what I didn't mention, which further complicates things, is the TDA money that comes through the Kern Cog comes through the sales tax. It is volatile. The funding levels are volatile, to say the least. I'll give you an example. So the current fiscal year we're in, we were projected to receive $44 million.
40 million. Dropped from 40.
Yeah, it was $44 million in the current fiscal year. Next year it's projected to drop by 10% to $40 million. Less than 5 years ago, it was in the $30 million range. That's how volatile sales taxes are. Certainly, people can see what's going on with the price of oil, even though the price of oil does affect the sales tax, but it also affects the number of employees we have in Kern County and the number of people that are buying goods that are subject to sales tax, like cars and trucks. So your biggest source of income, TVA, which represents 61%, is linked directly to sales tax revenue. So that's a volatile source of income. You do have reserves, and that's why to keep those reserves to sort of take the sting out of those ups and downs. But it's a very difficult decision that all boards like this have to go through. I mean, you could raise fare box to say $5 a head, and you might, for the people that had no other choice, they might have no other choice but to pay for it, but your ridership would likely go down.
Thank you
So
very
I
much.
don't know if that
No,
answers your question.
that helps me answer my question. I think, we are discovering the elasticity of our fares, and that is a moving target, as is the performance of routes as we change them. So, we are learning in a new market every time we expand those fares. So I'm happy to hear that. It sounds like we can have a reprieve, at least temporarily, until we get our routes established, and I'm happy to hear that. Thank you.
But let me couch that a little. There has to be an intent to try to achieve.
Absolutely.
There are some agencies that have no intent whatsoever of ever meeting fare box. GET is not one of those agencies. You generally do meet fare box. The current COG certainly wants to encourage out-of-the-box thinking and ways you can increase ridership. That, I believe, I didn't write the rules, I believe that's why there's exemptions in there for changes. So agencies like yours can make changes without the fear of having the hammer come down.
Thank you.
Cindy?
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you also, Mr. Hakimi, for coming in and explaining that. Along with Karen and the staff, I think you and Bob Neath have both been part of my education as far as like Elliot was saying, is our maturity of being on this board. And it's helped a lot with you kind of helping move things along as far as we being able to understand some of the money aspects of it. But I had a question regarding you stated, I think it was the F-tip money that is able to be moved down the line, so to speak. How far can that money be moved, and if, say, by some reason the funds become available through high-speed rail for us to build our facility, or would that money be able to be moved to other areas, or do we lose that money?
GET is not on track to lose any money. I think the closest deadline, Steve, is 2 to 3 years out. FTA and Kern COG and GET have actively been engaged with high-speed rail to make sure that Golden Empire Transit does not lose any of the federal money because of the impacts of high-speed rail. And so far, the relationship has been good. Golden Empire Transit also has the ability to use those federal funds for operations, and instead of banking the federal funds, they can bank the TDA, the TDA funds, which don't have an expiration date. So staff is on top of that, and Kern COG is also on top of that. Sometimes Steve doesn't like how on top of it. But no, Raquel and Steve talk constantly about, and none of our member agencies, we don't want any of our member agencies to lose any of their federal funds. That's why sometimes we get aggressive with, where's your paperwork? When are you going to submit your authorization? And that doesn't just apply to Golden Empire Transit, that includes every single city that gets federal funding, includes all the cities in Kern County. Nick? No, Nick's still here, so Nick knows what I'm talking about.
Jim?
Thank you so much for coming today, and quite frankly, I like the partnership we have. I feel like there's a real hand across the table every time you guys come and talk to us, or that I come and talk to you to find out information. I appreciate it. And, you know, if there's something that we need to pay more attention to, I'm grateful that you guys will speak up so that we don't lose money or get out of step with you guys, because I think it's important. Also, you know, ever since I came on the board, the fare box ratio has been a point of constant concentration with our attention around here. And I'm glad we had a good quarter. But I'm also concerned about the future, and if we have to raise rate on routes, how that affects the people who ride the bus. And if we are in a position where we have to do something and then we have to back off of it, what kind of help can we get from you guys? Have you ever experienced that with one of your agencies?
Bob, can you help me? Well, I think we've experienced that with the hours. You tried extending the hours, it didn't work,
Right.
and we went back, and there was no sanctions at all that were involved. Correct, Karen?
That's correct.
So
I was thinking more in terms of fare. We raise the fare and our ridership drops, and it has a major adverse effect on our fare box ratio.
there would not be sanctions as long as you made corrections. If you say your fare box went down to 15% and it stayed there for years and you didn't make any adjustments,
Yeah.
then I could see a scenario where the Kern Cog board will intervene and say, look, you have to do something. But in general, GET has been very responsive, unlike some of the other cities. And I think it's a good thing that you do so closely monitor your fare box and continuously make adjustments to try to achieve that. There are agencies, believe it or not, that's not even on their radar. Fare box is, recovery ratio is not their concern.
Well, I know that Bob makes reports to you about our conversations here, and you guys, being our committees, we also have a lot of conversations about that as well. So anyway, thanks for your help and assistance in being there for not just us but the county.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? Thank you, Aaron. We appreciate your
You're welcome.
time.
My pleasure.
Very much. We are now moving to executive session. So we'll move directly into our budget review. Steve Woods. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the last several months, staff has been developing operating budgets as well as capital program items that are proposed for the coming fiscal year 2016-17. Collectively, the increase, there's been a minor increase in operating expenses, and reflected in the budget summary is the fare increases that we're proposing in order to obviously meet the standard 20% recovery ratio. And so therefore, going forward, I'd like to just start from section 1 of the budget and work our way into it. Just being brief. The first item is just a general description of the items that we take to consider when we do our budgets, primarily having to do with wages, salaries, benefits, etc., the things that are on the union contracts. And then further down, the non-union contracts as well. So these are the items that are significantly impacting our budget. Obviously, operations and maintenance departments have a huge consideration in this regard. And these are very specific in detail, but yet they're adding to the overall expense of operating the district. Further down on page, second page, I think is more meaningful, the characteristics that were discussed at the Administrative and Finance Committee meeting having to do with increases throughout 61. And you'll notice that, first of all, fixed ground revenue, service hours increased, essentially over 5,000 hours, and that would be the estimate it would take to go ahead and operate the revised Route 61 that's also being proposed. And that also includes increases in total operating hours to do the service in a non-revenue and revenue area. And then along with that are the revenue service miles and then total miles for all the buses that need to operate that additional service, assuming that it gets approved and it would begin operating on July 3rd. Yes, sir.
Steve, you mentioned revenue and non-revenue area miles. Could you explain that?
Full revenue service is at the point when the bus actually begins to take fares for customers.
Okay, so
Anything prior to that would be considered like routing or transportation to the starting point. For example, buses that start at Cal State Bakersfield early in the morning, that's what they call deadheading, all the way out there just to start the operation. And then they come on in. So that's why in many cases you'll find hours being significantly different than revenue hours. Okay. Same thing with miles, everything seems to fall in line. When you talk to maintenance, it's always about miles. When you talk to operators, it's always about hours. So it's just vocabulary, the way things are understood. Further on, if you just like to trail with me up, there is the paratransit service is down a little bit this year, just a rough estimate. Certainly these things change and not static fixed route activities. These are certainly subscription activities, therefore I can increase and decrease. Operating days, there are two fewer operating days this coming fiscal year than the prior year. We all know it, we had February 29th was a send-off year, so another 4 years from now I'll be able to do it again. Further down, now you see all the staffing needs by each of the departments, and we will have each of the managers discuss anything that may have the impact upon those additional staffing requests. But further on in, these are all defined positions that the district needs in order to operate the service. So in the maintenance department, as well as obviously the drivers, you have flex and full-time operators, but you also have dispatchers and supervisors, route supervisors, a variety of people with different responsibilities. And certainly there are changes. And I believe each of the managers can speak to differences that you may have questions about as we move into the budget detail. Okay. Okay, so that's the following page is again the continuation of the department. The total employment we currently have is 338 positions. With the changes in service, we're looking at 356. So
20 people.
yes.
You might speak to the vehicle maintenance positions. I think it's important.
There is an item on the a new position for janitorial. That has to do with a position that, or a contract we currently have with an agency to come in and clean, and to our standards, they're not doing a very good job. Therefore, Mr. James requested that they employ somebody here and take control and supervision of the activities.
Is that the janitorial here at this, or is that at the transit centers?
It's here.
Here, okay.
Yeah.
When the increase in the mechanics A and
Oh, yeah, I'm
B,
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Promotional.
Yeah.
I think it's important the board understand.
I think you see ASC certification given out as well as checks. Those individuals obviously would expect to see promotions given that they've improved their skills. Does anybody have any other questions in regards to the staffing levels? Okay. Moving on to the next piece.
I've got a question.
Yes.
If our janitor works out here, would we consider taking our janitorial back at our other locations and doing it in-house instead of hiring it out?
That's certainly consideration. The economics might be more preferable if we do it in-house as opposed to out, but it depends on the quality of the service too. You know, how, you have a group that may run from 6 in the morning until 11 o'clock at night on a contract basis. That means you have to hire several employees to mirror that.
Right.
So that's a consideration.
But in that case, don't you think we have more control over how those facilities
Yes.
are maintained? And I think that's a big issue down at the downtown transit center. So I think that's something we should consider.
We've had multiple people come and complain about the bathrooms not being accessible because they're being cleaned.
Yeah. And a lot of times the condition in which they're left throughout the day comes and goes. There is somebody down there for a contracted basis to go in and make sure that those facilities are clean. And they may have to block them off to get them that way. It's unfortunate, but it's just the sanitation of the situation.
And for the safety of the person that's doing the cleaning.
Okay. Let's go right into the next page. It's a summary of the budget. And the way it's depicted right now, we currently list our 2015-16 budget. The next is our projection. And the projection is based upon 9 months of actual expenses and revenues from July 1st through March 31st, with an estimate of the last 3 months of the fiscal year. And then thereafter is the proposed budget, which is the compilation of all the departments, as well as the estimated revenues that we hope to receive. And this would include the proposal for a fare box increase. Okay. So first of all, if we just focused on the proposed budget increase or budgets for 16-17, $5,190,445 is the estimate for the fixed route revenue. In addition to that, we $166,320 for the paratransit service that we provide. I'd like to highlight the red number. That is the TDA requirement we need to have in order to balance the budget. So we're looking at $17,733,525. As Aaron mentioned too, yes, sir.
Does Kern Cog have that $17 million?
They will have.
Is there a case where we make a claim to them and they just say, hey, we're out of money?
Well, they give us the estimate that we approved back in March.
Okay.
We do a preliminary, that's based upon an estimate that they think will happen in sales tax. Okay.
So this number is theoretically good?
Yes.
Gotcha, thank you.
Further on down, preventive maintenance. Again, a good portion of our allocation each year from the congressional budget process goes to preventive maintenance. We're getting anywhere from $7.5 million to $8 million a year in appropriations. And you can tell that this is how much money it takes from the operational point of view, okay, to help finance maintenance. So in this case, we're estimating to take $5,097,189 to assist in the maintenance department. I kept earlier in years past, we used to worry the fact that the Congress was going to take away that funding opportunity, and that would obviously be devastating to the TDA. Would never support that. Make a dramatic change in our service. Okay. Estimated income for interest income is, as we all know, interest rates are so low, it's almost hard to put them on paper. But for $30,000, this is the money that we actually allow to sit in the county system, and the county is the one that makes the investments for us, and they give us a rate of return. It's a little better than just basic savings interest. We're hoping that the advertising agreement that we've entered into will produce $200,000 of advertising revenue, We hope that, that certainly falls into the fare box calculation. So whatever we can provide, whatever we can gain from that, that will wind up as part of the ratio.
Excuse me, on that, don't we have, I don't want to get into the discussion of the new contract, but isn't there a higher number on that for the guarantee?
It's 145.
Oh, 145.
145 plus 55%.
Why am I thinking it was 245?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Other items of sale would be, or revenue would be CNG sales. We do quite well. The generosity of the county operations, and they're bringing their vehicles over here all the time to get them filled regularly. I think we tend to find or fuel the West Coast division of Kern Regional Transit. So they're lining up here at 9 o'clock in the morning, being filled all the way through the evening. So, and we're happy to oblige. So, anyway, the total of all revenues we'll receive will be $28,646,020. Certainly with those revenues, you need to have the expenses that relate to that. They're in summary fashion, and I'll just point out that a lot of the increases in wages have to do with estimates made for coming forward. The last element of our labor contract ends March 31st. Renewal takes place April the 1st of 2017. So we're in the midst of estimating what we may be affected by going forward. Other than that, usually any wage or salary increases are based on a merit system, by each manager evaluating and then bringing forward to Karen for final review any changes that are made to anybody's wages or salary.
Why is the professional contracts and outside service up so much, 33%?
I believe it has to do with several of our contracts having to do with internal computer activities. We're looking at more contracts for support services. That has to tie in, that ties into our going forward of a $500,000 project to upgrade all of our computer systems. We're talking about telephones, AT&T, ShoreTel systems. We're looking at Carney's as a support for our computer.
And is that going to come before the board to approve them?
Yeah, it's part of that. Other things too, as we go into the individual contracts, I think you'll see those professional services more specifically involved as to what they're really made up of. The insurance, unfortunately, in my area of the situation, we're part of a joint powers authority in the state of California for transit. The object was to pool together transit entities in order to reduce the cost of insurance that took place back in the early 80s, where the cost was skyrocketing. And a lot of, actually, TDA ratio at one time excluded insurance costs as part of its calculation. These are the things that affect us when we talk about TDA. It's not just a simple percentages game. It's a lot of political aspects to it as well. So. And this is what happened. So JPA was formed. Long and short of it is, we were a member back in 1997. We've been a member ever since. And they here just recently took, I'm going to call them bullet. They had some significant claims come through the very last end of their fiscal year. And everybody has to share in that risk. Okay, and since we're now the third largest transit agency in that pool, obviously our share of that goes along with it. So we have, last year we were a little over $400,000 in deposits and in administrative fees. We're over $550,000 this year. So that's the reason why the bulk of this insurance has gone up. All the other insurances, the property insurance, crime, fiduciary liability, etc., they're all reasonable. They've only gone up 1 or 2%. They've changed it all, but in this case, in fact, we recently had to report to them a substantial increase in an accident we had, and the reserves had to be set at over $3.5 million because of the assertion and claim that was made.
Not from us, from somebody else.
Us.
We have a claim for $2.5 million?
No,
reserves.
Oh, reserves.
That's re-
This insurance is liability insurance,
It's part liability and part, yeah, mostly all liability for the most part.
basically. Are we self-funded for health insurance as well?
Yes.
So we get the benefit of pulling together, but then when somebody else has a big claim, then we get,
Yeah. When we do deposits, we do two things when we make a payment. We make a deposit of what we think the actuarial study will tell us that they think this is going to be the claim. And it's usually provided by the claims adjusters. In addition to that, we pay for an administrative fee for Bickmore Risk and Associates to actually manage the pool. So we actually create the policies and so forth. They manage from those policies. And they also handle the claims, and then they make these estimates. They go shop for excess coverage. One of the other aspects we have is we recover for $25 million. And what that is a layering. The pool itself only takes the first $1 million. There's another
That's
pool that
reinsurance.
takes reinsurance. We have actually 4 more layers of insurance that breach one to the other to the very end where you have somebody's catching $5 million. Recently, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, we had a fatality. It was clearly our fault, and we wound up trying to settle. And the numbers, when you first get into these situations, skyrocket. $10 million. So it wakes you up to the notion that you better have sufficient coverage. And if you had one accident that involved multiple claims, it can be even greater than that. This is what I was referring to with this one claim. We have it in our reserves now for $2 million for one of the claimants. The other claimant is at $1.75 million. And when they got this information as well, some of the other transit agencies who also had substantially high claims within the last 2 or 3 months of the fiscal year, it put a panic into the Joint Powers Association. They had to go up and everybody had to fund up enough to be able to cover reserves in that unity. Okay. So
Typically, how much does this fund go up annually? Obviously, it's not 32% every year.
no, it doesn't.
Typically, what is it?
Usually it will go anywhere from 5 to 10%.
And for how long has it been that way?
Actually, it's gone down.
So this is just basically an adjustment
Yes.
based on today's market
Yes.
and what's going
Claims.
on in the claims that happen at the very end.
When they finally settle.
Yeah. And I'm sure that if we were buying insurance at the market, it'd be twice that.
It could be.
At 1.5 million would be what you would be paying annually for this anyway. So what is in our reserves?
What's in our reserve? Right now, we have over $5 million. Our obligation to the JPAs would cover the first 250. Okay,
And then it's reinsurance after that.
it's reinsurance there. On first dollar
That's
basis.
very common. Very, we're in good shape on that.
Okay. And just a question, technical question on that. Being in the pool and therefore subject to the performance of all other members of the pool, is there some sort of evaluation, periodic evaluation of gleaning poor performance members or anything of that sort?
Yes, often, very, very much so.
Okay.
Yeah, when people, actually, there's an element within the organization that actually has a safety and safety feature, where they find somebody who's got problems, they'll send them out to help train their folks to be more sensitive to the issues that they had. An accident is simply an accident. It happens, but if it's preventable, that's where training comes in, and that's what that they do. They will send out, all of us are scheduled throughout the year for training in preventable accidents, and so that's what they come into. Keep in mind too, this is a deposit. When the final settlement occurs, and maybe this isn't a $2 million claim, but a $100,000 claim. Okay, all of a sudden that reserve just dropped. So the deposit we put against it comes back to us in the form of what they call a retroactive rebate. And it's old school insurance where you used to be able to get return on premiums you paid if you didn't claim anything. This is the case.
They call it a rebate?
We call it retroactive adjustment.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the same thing.
Okay.
But we
I
have to
didn't
wait.
think they were calling it a rebate.
Yeah, they call rebate, I used to call it a variety of things,
Yeah.
but in this case, the likelihood is we may see this go down radically next year, it's hard to say. But every year they hire an actuarial consultant to come in to assess the liability of all claims within the JPA. So,
And any year that the company does well, there's shares that are sent back to the members, correct?
yes. Yes.
Very
Okay. Parts, obviously materials and operating supplies only slightly increase. Fuel and tires, obviously, I think we talked about before, we were getting credits from alternative fuels tax, and that was 50 cents a therm for the entire year. It will expire December 31st of this year. So unless Congress reenacts it and the President approves it, it goes away. However, it's happened before, and a year later, they put it back in again, and they retroactively apply it back to prior years, like it happened here, I think it was last year. So it's possible that we would get that money back anyway. So, but for our purposes, this is what we have to express.
I had a specific conversation with a gentleman from APTA who's responsible for the lobbying of Congress, and we talked to us. He said, "Oh, yeah, this is like a backdoor subsidy, because it's an operational where FTA, is not your operations. This is directly off the operating side of the books."
Yep.
So he just said, there is a risk there that they know what's going on.
We're a producer. You have to invest in the equipment and so forth to produce it.
Yeah, one of the questions he had was in the future, would they extend the same thing for folks that start using electric buses?
Mhm.
And because if you go from CNG bus to electric bus, obviously you don't get to have that credit.
You lose it.
You lose that credit. So that's one of the things to think about when you go into all electric fleet.
Yeah, there's a.
But then there's
give back.
other electric subsidies.
But not from the federal government.
Well,
though.
if we get our solar panels up, there'll be a lot of credits.
There you go.
Okay. Okay, further on down, we just, we're advertising expenses, and that could vary. Obviously, the marketing budget drives the bulk of that expense for advertising, but we do advertise the Californian and a lot of our legal announcements we have to post fall into that category. Tickets and supplies and postage, we're trying to keep a lid on it, but it kind of got out of hand a little bit. So we brought it back down to $121,000 versus the $70 we had last year. If you'll notice, the projection shows 119. I think we just missed it on the estimate for last year's budget. And then finally is just other operating expenses, and that could be anything from banking fees, which run about $45,000 a year, to a variety of things.
Who's our bank?
Union,
And they charge us $45,000 a year.
about 40, yeah. I think all the money we collected is vault out here.
Mm-hmm.
That costs them a lot to handle coin.
Have we ever gone out to bid for that?
No. We go occasionally, we'll check it, but I have never really gone out to bid. There's not really a facility in town to handle that. The guard that picks up our money, for example, brings it to Los Angeles, to the bank downtown Los Angeles.
And then they sort it there, and
They
that's the fee?
recheck it. Yeah, we sort it here, count it, and we bag it, bring it down to them. They redo the same thing to validate it,
Mhm.
and that's it.
You count it or weigh it?
Count it.
Count it.
Yeah.
Mark counts it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Machines.
And then they charge us $45,000 to put it in our own bank account.
Well, we have many
Just-
accounts.
Right.
Yeah.
It's their operating costs.
Everything we do now is electronically. When we do ACH checks and we write them and we deposit direct deposits, that's different than check writing. Although the cost was in-house, when you give it to them and let them do it, it gets more expensive. And we dispense a lot of checks. You see every week, or every board meeting, you see all the checks we write out and all the ACH deposits we make. And that's just charges. Every now and then they'll come in and what we do have is some of the balances are subject to daily interest rates. but the interest is 0.1% per annum, which really doesn't get you much as far as credits go to offset those expenses. So,
And do we use their cash handling services? I mean, do they give us advice on
yes.
handling the
Yeah.
cash that we have with them?
Mhm. However, we are limited by law on the type of investments we can make.
Yeah.
And recently they increased the required security for all public funds held at banks. So I think there's more of a stringent requirement now, pledge 100%. It's like you and I, if we have a bank account that's got 250,000 or less, it's insured, FDIC insured. Anything above that, you're at risk. So. Okay, so that's the total of expenses, 28,646 over 20. And the best part that involves, I think, most meetings is the next page, TDA. And I'm just focusing on the proposal for 2016-17. And these are the estimates we received from actually Mr. Snoddy and the COG staff, and these are the numbers that I post here to give you an idea of how much the estimate will be coming up next year. We have $18,212,799 in what the account called local transportation fund, and then that's basically your sales tax account. State Transit Assistance Fund is the special element that the state allocates to us through the population basis. And then that's $2,170,108. So the total estimated funding for the coming year is $20,382,908. Now, there are claims ahead of ours that take priority, that by TDA regulations have to be addressed. Number one is the current COG as a regional planner gets a portion of those funds. I believe it's 2% of the gross. Excuse me. The next one is the Bakersfield, and that's because they operate the Amtrak. So rail takes precedent over bus when it comes to TDA distributions. So they get first claim, and they draw down the funds usually in July, the first time they have a chance to draw down. And then whatever comes out throughout the rest of the year is what we have to bank on for our operating expenses. Okay.
And these estimates are based on
State Controller's Office.
but the sales tax, the expected reduction of sales tax because of the economy.
Yes.
The oil economy and
Yeah.
so forth.
For
All
many-
that's incorporated into these numbers.
Yeah, for many years, I'll just re-elaborate this. Sales tax is a funny animal. If you had a static population and you had unemployment and a higher or bad economic situation, sales tax will go down. But if your population grows, even though you may have a bad economy, but there's still more people coming into the marketplace, one offsets the other. So in actuality, you could gain sales tax that otherwise would be forecasted as losing. That happened to us when the city of Bakersfield grew by leaps and bounds over the last, 8 years. A lot of other communities in California were locked down by their own limitations in terms of the city size, and they couldn't grow. Where Bakersfield was growing, and so even though we had a bad economy, we were still bringing in more sales tax for that. So even though they may forecast, there's a different situation going on where we're concerned, especially when the population continues to grow.
Cindy?
The Amtrak money, is that something that's fixed all the time, or does that change?
I just estimated it'll change.
That's,
Yeah, I don't know what their estimate will be when they come over, or I just put it in just as a placeholder.
okay,
But in the past, it's run around 250, although it probably will increase.
okay.
Okay.
When you say Bakersfield runs that, so
They maintain the Amtrak station.
oh, they maintain the station?
Yep.
Ah, so, okay.
So further, which leaves the remaining funding of $19,485,981. And again, when you apply that to our operating needs, you have a balance of 1,752,456 left over. That leaves us with the capital program that I have attached in here as well, that will depict 8,164,790 as a need to pledge against existing grants as well as new grants. Okay, so essentially we'll have a deficit of 6,412,334, and that will be applied to any reserves we may have. And currently we have a cap reserve account of 24,807,503.
So if the estimates of sales tax are better, then this number will go down.
Yes.
If it's worse, it'll go up, obviously, but this is what we have currently in the bank.
We haven't finished the accounting for this fiscal year, so it's a likelihood that we'll get extra funds this year. The county typically is very conservative in their estimates, and typically every year for year, we've always gotten more. Okay.
I suspect it's best that they be conservative.
Your capital program here is separated from the federal capital?
Well, you have, in the federal side, if you have a grant with them, you have to have a match to their number.
Okay.
Usually the match is 80-20, 80% they'll finance, 20%
I
we'll
see.
finance.
Yeah,
That money comes from here.
I see.
Okay. So further on down, you see the percentages. And again, at 19.4 would be the proposed percentage combined. I would state that, you know, in TDA regulations, there are two different measures. One is for fixed route, and that's the 20% standard. Paratransit is not held to 20% standard. It's held to 10%. And I would argue that you should retain them on a separate basis, not combine them.
But our COG doesn't do that.
Or any other
Actually, I
resources.
think it's been a matter of custom, not policy. I'm not sure whether they actually, Bob, do you have, is it by policy that there's a combination, or is it by custom?
You know, I've just been practicing it for 14 years. I really never looked it up. But
I don't think it exists in TDA regulations, frankly.
It isn't.
You know, there's no combination, so what the board decides, per board.
So there is a way, maybe that if the board, if the COG board were to have staff review that policy, then they could come back with a recommendation that maybe it could be separated.
Because the 20% has always been fixed route systems. Paratransit has been 10%. And if you look at these percentages, you'd have to say that we comply with both.
So Bob, would that be something that one of the board, a board member on the current COG could ask staff to review that
Through the chair,
policy?
of course. I also wanted to clarify some earlier discussions about the exemption policy of TDA. Let's say the whole reason for that exemption is to extend service to people that are currently not getting, or extend hours. Once you've exempted that service, you are now making fare box. For example, if you're making 20% fare box right now, and you extend operating costs, and you ask for exemption, we grant it, you are still making fare box in my analysis. Even though if you include that into the calculation, you are now 1% below. So I want to make sure that distinction is understood. From a penalty phase, current COG would still see you at the 20%, and that would be separated from your aggregate reporting for the TDA allowable time. So, and as far as from where I'm looking at, do I go to Aaron and say, well, hey, we have a violation? No. I mean, you'd still be making fare box with the exemption separated from that calculation. And the same thing, you oversee, we look at it from the aggregate, but if you're over on the fixed route and you're under slightly on the
paratransit, it all balances out to the same thing. You're at your fare box maximum or minimum. So I hope I made that so clear, but, and I get expert analysis from your agency every single month, more detailed than any other transit operator. Emory provides me with everything I need to know of what not only have you done, but I can make intelligent decisions on are you going to be able to make it within the constraints of the fiscal year, and I can see a trend analysis and say, oh yeah, I don't have any discomfort level with the analysis. So you're already providing me with all the tools I need to make that kind of determination. I hope that answers your question.
Yes. Thank you very much.
Okay. If you look to the next page, the capital program is listed. And I just want to bring the board's attention, the obligations and these are proposed projects, although some of them, the 15-16 carryover, is just that at this point in time in our budget, we are not ready to make a procurement yet for the computer replacement because we're finishing our 5-year plan for IT. And then the other thing is a brake drum lathe, and Chris, I don't know, was that actually purchased or?
No, about the rotor lathe, and this one is still outstanding. I'm still looking at one.
So those two items are being carried forward just to express the need for additional TDA funding. And in 16-17, maintenance requests, funding or funds for several items. Chris, if you'd like to elaborate on these items.
Sure, I've gone ahead and applied for a grant again for some more hybrid cars. Again, that's up in the air whether we receive the grant or not, but it's in this year's budget because there is a match to that. Water pipe replacement in this building and in the shop. We've had several leaks over the past few years, and we've had a couple plumbers look at that and that suggested that we repipe it. I guess in the 80s when they built these places, the galvanized piping came from China or something, and we got some explanation that that galvanized coating on there is not as, I guess it's a 30-year pipe, is what they're telling me.
And it's 35 years.
A question about that. That's something that, can we ask the high-speed rails to tell, hey, we just spent 150 grand updating our pipes, can you add that to our moving cost? Is that something we can get back from them or not?
We will try our hardest.
I'm sure you will. My only thing is if we're gonna build a new facility in 2 years, do we want to spend 150 grand?
Or do you want to risk having a pipe blow
No, none of those.
and doing an emergency repair?
None of the
I
above.
think that would be cheaper.
And that same thing with the parking lot resurfacing. It's not gonna cave in this year.
No, it was on a schedule from the time that we put the parking lot in. Every 3 years, if we have that story code put on it. So it was due this year.
Is that a Caltrans grant for the cars?
San Joaquin Air Pollution Control District. Then 4 modular buildings. We're looking at adding buildings out there where we currently have the safety department now. We're doing some planning as well with that for trying to get a bathroom out there and possibly some plug-in terminals for the cars. And I mentioned the bathroom. Yeah. 1 CNG pickup that was from a former grant with San Joaquin Air Pollution Control District. That truck was CNG or requested as CNG. At the time they were only taking plug-in hybrid or electric cars only. I got notification that that was pushed forward when they got some more funding for that. So that's in the loop right now. 24 CNG buses. That's for the 500 series buses we have now. They're coming up on replacement. 5 paratransit vehicles as well. Maintenance tech office, that's out in the shop. That's where the parts room is. We're looking to expand that. It's a small project. They just had too many people jammed in one little space, and it's been that way quite a while. So we're looking to expand that, give them some room for some filing cabinets and whatnot.
Yeah.
Operators
Chris,
break, yes.
Excuse me. Going back to the bus replacements, that's a required replacement based on the age of the existing buses. Is that correct? Is that within? That's why
We'll
you're
be within our
replacing-
12-year and 500,000 mile
Right.
requirement, yes.
So is that funding, that's just part, that's almost automatic funding for replacements? Is that part of the,
We scheduled that, yes.
it's not a grant, you don't apply for a grant, it's simply replacement money that's automatic?
It's a grant.
It's a
Is it a
It's a
grant?
grant.
Yeah.
So it's not guaranteed funding, or?
We have to allow for it. So in the year, we talked about, I think with the policy last update, we have the current year of appropriations, and then that can add forward to the next 4 years, for a total of 5 years, okay? If you take the following year and the following year and the following year, you add, and you just save all that up, that'll take care of your funding needs, okay?
So it's formula funds, it's not discretionary funding, it is formula
Oh,
funding.
it is formula?
Yeah.
But we don't get sufficient in any single year to be able to undertake this size of a procurement. So we have to save it up over multiple years to be able to do that. But 24 buses in the bus manufacturing business is considered a small order. So we don't like to go for onesies, twosies.
I understand. No, my basic question is a kind of a simple basic question. The capital funds provided by at federal level requires these replacements, requires you to keep your equipment up to date and so forth. So my question was, is that money then therefore automatic? And the answer is no.
No.
They don't require you to replace them at any particular age. You just are prohibited from replacing them before 12 years and 500,000 miles.
I see.
So if you have had really good service and they're really great buses, and there are places that run them 16, 18 years, they do midlife rebuilds and run them longer, but we've been of the practice of replacing them at 12 years, which is fairly standard practice in the industry.
Okay.
I've got a quick question, Mr. Chairman. As you look at 24 CNG buses, as I spoke to some of our colleagues at APTA, there's some folks that are very close to us, like over the hill, that have been are buying considerable amount of electric buses for their routes. The technology, from what I was told, has changed considerably since, like, when they first came out, and they're getting 250 miles to charge or whatever. But anyways, is it something that we need to be thinking about? Instead of buying all 24 CNG, we need to buy 5 or 4 or a certain percentage an electric bus, and then start to move our fleet in that direction. I know there's some agencies that have said that by 2030 they're going to be 100% electric. We haven't made that commitment yet, but
Well, we have one application that we have with the low carbon emissions program for the state of California, and essentially we have to wait 3 cycles before we had enough money to buy basically 3 buses, actually 2 buses. The buses themselves cost over $750,000, so that kind of precludes what you can do to your fleet.
right.
Number 2 is that, my understanding is, it takes 2 buses to replace 1 diesel or CNG bus in operations. So your volume goes up, your cost goes up considerably, and we just don't have that much money.
I was talking to some of the guys that have been out there testing them, and they said that their maintenance costs are 60% lower than a CNG or diesel bus. And so I just think, my question is, I'd like for staff to go to APTA and to study some of these folks and give us a back a report. on the successes and failures in the sort of the status of the industry. Because from what I talked to probably half a dozen transit board members from all over the country, and this is like the hot issue. This is going to this electric bus. I'd like for us to really understand the issue and use the folks out there that are out testing them to give us the information and
Well, this number can be traded in. I mean, we might
Sure.
have the same number, but you buy fewer buses. Okay.
sure.
And
But it could also, but it could also be that we get 24 buses, and then over the next 3 years, as we're saving up our funds, see how the electric buses held up in the other markets.
right.
If they could hold up in, the LA market, then probably holding up in Bakersfield and Western Kern County would be pretty easy. It would also give us an idea as to what the maintenance cost would be, what we would need to do to take care of those buses in your departments, and et cetera, et cetera. So, I mean, I'm all for electric buses, don't get me wrong, but I'm also pretty big on, let's see what the big boys say after they've had some for a while and have the, bigger budgets than we have
Yeah.
to do this with.
Yeah, but the principle is you don't want to go with version 1 of anything. You want to wait till version 2 or 3.
You want
Well, and I think
Along
we're probably
those
at
lines.
version 2 or 3, but that doesn't mean that they've been tested fully yet
Right.
either.
No,
So,
that was my point.
yeah, absolutely.
Cindy has a point, but if Chris, you wanted to weigh in on that, we'll let Cindy
I
ask
just,
her question.
I just had a question really quick regarding, you said that 24 is kind of a small order, and talking with other, other board members from California, and is it possible to partner with another transit district from, I talked to somebody from West Covina and somebody from the Foothill district, if you can pull a order together so that you get a better price.
That's a common practice.
So it is possible to do that.
It is. If someone has an option available, we could use their option to purchase buses for ourselves. There's not, it's not like going down to the car dealership and buying a car and it's the same at the dealership in Bakersfield as it is in Los Angeles. Every property specs their buses uniquely for their operating environment. For example, we have extra air conditioning units on our buses because of the climate that we operate in. So, but if there's someone who has a spec that is similar to yours, that's done frequently.
I was even thinking as close as regional transit. I mean, they just purchased some new buses too. That could have been something that we could have partnered. I think we should have the same buses anyway. I mean, we're traveling in the same area, so.
Their buses are not as heavy duty as our buses are, because they really operate in a different environment. Our buses are stop and go every block.
And there's a further distance.
Right. So they're not as heavy duty.
Isn't there at the federal level, last year or early this year, I think it was last year, a program implemented for a single common procurement organization within FTA or...
I remember that too.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've tried that for a long time.
Oh, they have?
Yeah,
It's not,
commonly called a white book spec or something like that.
And
It's
so
kind of
that-
the basics, but it's like Karen mentioned, every property has their own, specialty to the bus that they want done to it or whatnot. So they've never got that to a point. The bus manufacturers love it. It would drive costs down and so on and so forth. And they've really pushed that even throughout so that's what you're hearing that. But it's never came.
It's never gelled, huh?
No.
You can't standardize a procurement. But at that level, I thought the primary intent was to reduce costs simply from a contractual level. In other words, at federal level contracting, they put out an omnibus contract for $1 billion for the year, and then all the transit organizations draw from that with their own specifications. That's not
I'm
the
not
way.
aware of that.
Okay.
Yeah, everything's still formula funded unless it's been somehow earmarked or discretionary.
Mhm.
But for the most part, the allocations are based on population, service area, and so forth, and the size of your operation, what it serves.
Thank you.
Okay. Any more comments about the buses, or we'll wait for the big guys to shake them down?
Are our buses different than Fresno's?
You mean brand?
Just the
Just in
configuration, the equipment that we have on them? The general
I don't know, it's been a
specs?
while since I've seen them. They bought hybrids in the past. They have a variety of vehicles as well. They don't stay to one path. So I wouldn't know.
They have both CNG and diesel?
Oh yeah, and they've got some hybrids as well that are parked. Been parked.
That have been parked?
Yeah, because they don't operate.
used
They
to
probably
have
got rid of them by
They used to
now.
have some LNG down there too, didn't they?
Liquid petroleum?
They do the midlife. I've seen them do the midlife and put different engines in them and different technologies. I mean, they were real grant driven for a while too. Whatever they get their hands on money wise to upgrade the bus, they were doing it. So I'd have to say it's been probably 5 years since I've been there.
Is there any benefit to us to have our COG talk to their COG and say, why don't we do an order together?
The
that
COGs.
drive the,
The COGs really don't, I mean, they could talk to each other, but they're not really in the driver's seat. It's really the transit agencies that are in terms of making the purchases.
but they have the money, right?
Yes,
So they
but
could make strong suggestions that we work together if it was worth our time. If it's not worth our time, let's just go on with the conversation, but if it's worth our time to drive the cost down on the 24 buses or whatever we're getting, I'm just a question. That does need to be answered here.
well, the interesting thing about federal capital grants is there's not a lot of incentive to drive the price down. You apply for the money, it's allocated to you. If you don't spend it, it goes back to somebody else.
And you lose your next year's funding
So-
in that amount.
Yeah, sometimes you can add related projects into the grant, like purchasing tools or something that would go along with it. But while certainly we want to be responsible in spending the taxpayers' dollars, there's not a lot of benefit for us to try and
Interesting.
save a few dollars.
Interesting.
If the point is to try to drive the costs down, I can tell you, I've reviewed years of contracts with these bus manufacturers. And you're really not going to get a break unless you get into a multiple year contract of several hundred buses, like LA, or you're going to put out a 9-year contract out there for 900 buses at 100 buses a year.
Nice.
You start filling up their order board, you become a priority customer.
I see.
But I mean, I look at all the pricing between, what San Diego pays and on the West Coast here. They're fairly close. I mean, there's, whether you're buying 24 or 10 or 50, they're kind of all over the place. But the ones you see the big price breaks on are the big players, yeah.
I see.
Bob, you wanted to weigh in on this?
Through the chair briefly, of course, everybody at KernCog is excited about this technology, and we're looking countywide. We now have 3 electric buses working in Shafter. We're gonna have one working in McFarland soon. So on the small rural, they're starting to make the commitment into transition. It's a little bit easier. But on your scale, I want to make sure everybody understands, there's one financial component that Kern County does not have an advantage over the ones you've mentioned, is a measure tax. That, the big purchase like that, a lot of it was, for example, out in the desert, they're committed to their entire fleet. A lot of that is funded by the measure tax down in Los Angeles through SCAG. So that's a key financial component that we do not have at this moment, that makes those projects, those type of capital conversion projects practical.
Well,
Likelihood of getting that in Kern County is pretty thin.
so how many, in the grant with ARB, how many electric buses is that, one coming up?
We're looking for two.
Two.
For the ARB, that's a rehab project too. You take out one of our old buses.
Yeah.
And they take them and they retrofit, they strip them all down, take all the weight out, and then repower them.
So in essence, or in a way, those two electric buses will be our way of testing the technology and that sort of thing.
But
So we'll have in-house capability in that sense.
Exactly.
Great,
Yeah, that's listed further on down.
thank you.
Chris, do you want to wrap up the
Yeah.
operations on maintenance?
We're also looking at expanding the operators break room behind us here. It's fairly too small. 10 extra shelters, as you remember, we bought 15 this year. We're looking to, we approved up to 25, so we're looking for the approval or the money for 10 more shelters. The 5 HVAC units are the 5 that we have left on this building to upgrade. Doing that for a couple different reasons. The energy savings for one, kind of meet our EMS. We're falling behind with our electrical savings at the moment, so we think this would help. Also, those units are very old.
Can we move into our next facility? I think I'm joking. I'm joking. I just don't, you know, what are we gonna do with them?
And then
The reality is, can I respond to that, please? What I've seen is it's all a game of, it's a negotiation game. You sit down with good intentions, and I see it from the high-speed rail, and you'll be able to work these things out. There's no question about it. I've seen win-wins all over the place, particularly up in Fresno.
You know, if we go from a 10 SEER to a 16 SEER machine, that becomes a part of the negotiation for the next building.
Yeah.
So that should cover it, I think. But I like the way you think.
Pouring money into my building, I'm gonna tear down in 18 months.
They might want to take the units themselves and use them.
Sure.
And the last item is to do some kind of retrofit to the building. I just mentioned that with our commuter bus. I asked them to bring one up here while we were evaluating the bids, and it doesn't fit in the shop. So there's some piping and whatnot's going to be moved around, some ductwork in the ceilings, as well as possibly replacing one of the hoists so we can pick it up.
Can I go back to the operator's break room just quickly? Is there a sink in there, faucet and water? I didn't think there was, because I go in there looking for water sometimes. Are you planning to put the sink in there for any purpose?
We haven't gotten that
Yeah,
far
but-
into the planning,
Okay.
but that's a great suggestion.
It's a suggestion, actually. Okay, thank you. It's just Cindy, go ahead.
If we were going to maybe partner with the city again and maybe give them some money again to do some more ADA upgrades, and would that come out of this, or would that come out of the reserve? Or would that be something that had to be added to this, or would
Yes.
that come out of the
It would
reserve?
have to be added to this.
Okay. And when would we
Yeah, that was
discuss
Cindy's
that? I
question.
mean, when
Tonight?
Tonight.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right now?
Well, the funding we used previously, that came from,
Same.
Our reserves?
our reserves.
Yeah.
I thought it was,
We're on reserves.
all right. Thank you. Can we open the discussion up then about, we've had several discussions.
You're
on
the chair,
this.
you can do it.
Yeah, well, let's.
Is that an item that's yet to come?
No.
No.
Now's a good time.
Yeah, let's do it.
No, I just, I think all of us were happy with what the city did. We're still waiting on the county to, I'm not really sure where that's at right now. I know they said they were gonna try and add more money to the pot now to make the upgrades go further, but I'm not really sure where that's at right now. But I think we were all happy with the work the city did, and I think it would be great for, it was a great, you had a great PR event out there. It was in the paper, it was on all the news. I think it's great PR for us to show that we are investing in the community, and I think I would love if we could add that to this.
You have a suggested amount for the coming year? We gave them $500K last year, or this past period.
Did they match? Did they match the 500? It was just we just gave them 500?
We gave them 500 to the county.
They actually got some money, didn't they, and put with that?
Yeah, I think in the end they did. I would like to, if we could, to make the same investment. I don't know what the rest of board.
I think the program went really well, and I think the city did a good job. We did get them to match some of it last year. I would like to see if they would match all of it. If we're, I think that we stepped out. We took a leadership position last year. We made some really nice changes, improvements. But I would like to see that they have the same level to commit, because remember, these are shared facilities. The sidewalk is just not only for transit. The pavement is not only for transit. Normal people park their cars on it. I would like to see if we can get the city to match our funds and make it go even further. We're willing to put our money up there out of our reserve account, no less. I think we should go ask the city if they would do the same. And if they're not willing to do the same, I think that tells us where they're at. If they are willing to do the same, then I think we gained a partner.
Well, I think we've established the partnership already. It can grow, obviously. But Nick mentioned in his earlier comment today, he's expecting some funds. He mentioned something about some funds that are coming in to augment the work they've already done, that they'll be able to do some additional work this year. Is that?
Be able to do additional work for the funds they've already received, that they're able to stretch the funds
Stretch
further.
the funds, right. Is that funding from them? Or
No, that's
just
the funds that we,
productivity measures,
yes.
efficiency?
It costs them less to do
I see.
than what they estimated it would cost, so they're able to do more.
Have we gone out and inspected the work that they have completed and have signed off on it?
We haven't formally signed off on it, but Emory has gone out and inspected them all.
And have we
taken photos.
Have we sent them the checks for the money yet?
Just got the bill yesterday.
Emory, how do they look?
I think they're looking good. They're, as Nick had mentioned, it looks like most of them in the city are complete now. There's a few more they have to do, but they're looking great. Several of them I've taken before and after pictures to show the difference.
So we have two ideas, or maybe a combination of both. Continuing on with the evaluation program, but ask for compensating funds. What is the term, compensating funds?
Matching funds.
Matching funds. Comments? Jim?
I like both the ideas. I have no problem with them. So,
Would you think the county, you'd want to wait until they perform before you?
Yeah, I think this is rewarding the city for their quick how quick they got out and did it, and I think, yeah, we would have to wait on the county to see what we would.
Well, I don't understand why we have to wait. I mean, in my mind, the county's out of the picture at this stage, unless they perform, and then it'd be.
I think the county's gonna have to be in the next budget.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah, that's,
If
I
they're
agree.
not there, we can't address it.
Sure.
I see.
So,
I don't know what to do about the county, you know, I don't understand what's going on.
Well,
If I've missed a meeting and they have come in and talked about it, then I don't remember that, but I don't know what's going on, so.
well, the last meeting I attended on the facilities meeting, where we had Bob and his colleague there, they were talking about waiting for some additional funds to add to the 500K we gave them, and then wait, and they have to wait to start the actual work into July. July is when they're planning to start the work. That was the game plan.
That's what I had heard too, but there were a lot of projects. I mean, there were a lot of areas they could have started in doing
Yeah.
some work instead of having, you know, moving their deadline back and back and back because of one reason or another. So,
That's true. I'm just, if you consider from a planner standpoint, it kind of makes sense. Plan this work out in one chunk as a project and so forth. I'm not taking their side or anything. I'm just saying that it seems like a rational way to plan out a bit of work.
yeah, but I'm with Director Baldwin. I just think, yeah, if they get it done, then we'll consider it in the next budget. I mean, we can't reward them right now or invest in a project that, you know, may get pushed further down the line. So I think we just consider the city right now.
And if we take Elliot's idea of saying, you know, here's $500,000, you know, match it up to $500,000 of our money, then maybe, I don't know if the county will want to do that or not. Who knows what the county will want to do in the future. Nobody's talking to us. I feel like I'm in a vacuum. So the city has come several times. One of the groups that I represent meets with them, and along with Get on a quarterly basis to get updates on what's going on with that. However, I do want to make sure that in the next series that we have input on the city and whenever we do the county on the projects. Because there are some projects that I think we need to determine that need to take priority. Safety factors being not just ADA. ADA number one, safety being number two. We want to make sure that we're working together to benefit everybody in the city. So I like the idea.
If I could just respond, I think maybe they don't have $500,000 to contribute to us. I don't know. But I think that we ought to at least make them partly responsible for us doing improvements in the right of way. That's reality. Number two, I appreciate your point. I assume that the process we already have an agreement in place on how we're going to do it, but the process would be the same. Those improvements would come before the Facilities Maintenance Committee and then go before the full board. We welcome your input and the voice group input, you know, in the committee meeting as we try to decide where to allocate the funds.
So, let's see, there are a couple of things in my mind. One is, are we recommending or directing to establish this as an annual $1 million investment? No, just year by year.
I don't think so.
Okay. I was gonna ask if you wanna, I mean, you obviously wanna weigh in on this, Karen. Let me make one other quick point, or question, if I can remember what it was. No, the idea of rewarding the city and thinking, recognizing their work, one idea on how to do that is to if we thought of $1 million investment again this coming year, is to give them $750 and $250 to the county as a differentiation, just as a to make that differentiation. That's just a thought to put into the pot here. Sure.
I was just going to ask the question, if 500,000, matching it with 500,000 of the city money is the right amount. They did 43 stops total, I believe, with the PTMISEA and the $500,000 that we put in. Emory has identified 18 locations that he would recommend that they look at making repairs. They may have some additional, but $1 million may be more than what they can spend. And they're having budget problems just like everybody else, and to ask them for $500,000 for this purpose may be overwhelming.
My perspective in saying that is we're not asking them for $1 million. We're telling them that we're willing to put our money where our heart is, and we're asking them to do the same. Our budget is considerably smaller than theirs, and yet we're willing to take it out of our precious reserves, because we don't, our reserves are definitely not going up by that much every year. This year is a perfect example. So I feel that if we're willing to invest our riders and FTA and our TDA funds, that they can surely find money. And if they can't, or if then we may have to make a different decision. So
Would it be then that we are willing to put in up to $500,000, depending on the amount that they are able to match?
I think that would be a better approach.
Sure.
So if they can only do 250, then we do 250.
exactly.
Okay.
I understood it that way.
Okay.
Okay.
That's what I think that's a better way to go.
Okay. Good. So we add that to the program
So
here?
we
Do
would
we
add
need to-
$500,000. This is not an action, this is just information, but we'll put it in there.
Okay.
Up to.
500,
Okay.
500,000.
City owned.
For city only,
And you
right?
don't want to put anything for the county, right?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Cindy.
Okay.
Thank you, Petition.
Just a couple few things. We have
Shop, please contact
camera
dispatch.
replacements,
Shop, please
throughout the
contact
entire,
dispatch.
Organization, both administration, downtown, southwest. And that's all financed right now. We have that fully funded to do all the replacements and upgrade the camera system entirely. So it'll be part of the IT report, but it has a major impact on the way we handle our systems. So I think that, but it is fully funded, so. And it's through the same thing, state of California. I think that was the SB 75 funding that comes through there. So, actually, it was once part of our security system back over here when we were designing that other building. And the funds are there, we might as well use them and upgrade the camera system. Commenting earlier, we talked about TDA obligations to grants. Those are grants that we currently have, we haven't spent yet, but we pledged 20% against these grants. So at the bottom of this whole report is the $8,164,000. That's the number that's applied to the previous page for the capital program. Okay, so take $8,164,000, go back to the previous page. It'll be listed as used capital programs, 1,864,000. It's in the middle of the page, and that's the same number, that's where it comes from. Okay.
Before we go to the next section, are we through with this section?
Yes,
Do we have more pages to go?
we have, yes.
Okay. Go ahead.
Just have one more page in this section that has to do with revenue. I think we talked about it quite a bit. It's a breakdown of all the different types of revenue received. This actually depicts what the proposed was without the increase we're proposing. And then obviously the last column on the far right is the proposed revenue coming from the fare increases that we're proposing. So this is just the detail that goes through all of our different fare types. The CNG and other revenues are depicted on the second page. And lastly is the paratransit, which is, again, middle of the second page. So the end result is what we see here.
When we were in San Antonio, they sold 7-day passes. Have we looked at 7-day passes?
No, we haven't. We looked at 15-day passes. It's not what we expected before, but it is performing.
Could we look at having all those different types? I mean,
Yeah, we're actually working towards that tap card feature of our fare boxes.
Right.
That's reloadable cards. And then you can expand your program from that point of view and establish different ways in which you can create fares. Okay.
Has there been a study or consideration for a veterans pass? Is there any interest in that? Gina?
As part of my presentation, I will be proposing that we get sponsorships
Oh, yeah.
next year that would cover the cost of those fares so that we could offer free rides to veterans and advertising to the sponsors.
Thank you. Excellent.
I wouldn't have any other comments to make about the fares. I think that it speaks for itself. We've been through quite a bit of discussion about what the cause and effect will be if you raise fares. You can lose rides. However, the increase should more than offset the loss in ridership. And hopefully this may not have that much of an effect, but it's still a matter of putting it out there and see how it works and if the trend continues, or maybe it turns around, maybe it starts increasing. Hard to say. So, okay. So,
Are we taking debit cards at this point?
not yet, we're waiting on the equipment.
We're waiting. It's been
So
ordered.
it's been ordered.
Oh, I see.
Oh, yeah, we have an agreement. It's been ordered, we're waiting on the equipment to arrive. Once we do that, we'll put it in place. Credit card, debit card. I'm finally out of breath. So, we want to,
we have resolved it or not.
Sorry,
yeah,
a point came up in a previous meeting about the cost of the processing fee for the credit card.
yes.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, that was resolved. There was a question about who's going to pay that.
Yeah, we will.
Okay, that's all covered.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I couldn't remember, I'm sorry.
It had to do with, maybe it was getting us.
Right.
Oh,
And we're going to do phase one, which is just the offices downtown, and install those equipment machines, train people, and start taking cards. I'll report back to the board how we're doing.
Clarification, I'm assuming, maybe I made the wrong assumption. Taking the cards on the bus itself, or you sell the passes?
So for passes, you buy passes.
Okay, but it's not the machine on the bus?
No, it's not.
We're not there yet.
No, we're working on that aspect.
That's gonna be phase 2.
That's what you were talking about before. Thank you.
I think the thought was that a premium charge on, or fair charge.
That's
For every time you use the vehicle, use it on the vehicle.
So, are we going, what's our process here? Are we going through this entire document, or are we going?
That was the plan, unless you feel like you know enough to give us direction.
Well, I was just asking, first of all, but the reason is we have the other agenda items, the fare increase and the changes.
Service change.
Yes, and those are intended, the information that's in here is intended to inform your
Support that.
decisions about those
Right.
two things.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, the other thing too is the Finance and Administrative Committee did review this material.
That's the reason I was asking the question. There's already been a review by our committee. I'm not trying to shortcut or shortchange anything here, but what's the pleasure of the board? You want me to continue on?
I was on the committee, so it's up to you.
I was on the committee as well. It's up to
And
you.
what is the recommendation of what was the recommendation?
At the time, there was no recommendation because we needed to provide more information to the members. That information was provided by email to them. Prior to the meeting.
Yeah, what we asked, one of the things we asked in our meeting was, show us what would happen if we did not raise the fare. How would that affect our fare box recovery ratio?
Yeah, and I think that's where I'm going also, is I'd like to see that data before we, I think before we really.
Yeah, I can
Okay.
email everybody, I guess.
Give you the information necessary for Gina's presentation. Service changes, is that right, Gina?
Well, actually, I just want to bring your attention to the difference in the reports.
Okay.
If you go to page 2 of the handout I gave you was the budget without fare increases.
Without fare increase?
Yeah, that's, Jim, that's to your right.
Yeah.
And it's the same budget format, it's just not taking into account the change in revenues. And the effect that I think you wanted to see was on page 2, in terms of the ratio and how it would be affected. It's,
Over here,
yeah, that's it,
page 2.
that's it.
Steve, can you speak up? Make sure we get you on that microphone.
All set? But as you can tell, if you didn't have the fare increase, the combined ratio would be, 18.12. The paratransit would be almost 9%, and then the fixed route would be almost 19%. So that makes up the difference. I mean, we're going to have some shrink in ridership, but overall, by doing a fare increase, you're compensating or offsetting that with more revenue. So, okay, you might lose 10 rides, but you might earn, $20,000 more in overall revenue. So that's what it boils down to. It's a guess. It's an educated, somewhat guess.
So, with this information to the board, are we prepared to go to that subject?
If you want to go there.
Yeah.
Well, it's up to the board whether you want to continue the budget process or go to the next agenda on a board agenda item.
That's what I'm suggesting, unless you have some specific
No?
things you want to draw out of the budget report. I believe that the rest of it is detail.
Just detailed budget departments.
So we have the with or without the fare increase documents in front of us. Can we go to the fare increase item?
Let's
I
be,
mean, okay, now do we need to talk about the fare
Sir.
changes, service changes first? That's on the
Yes.
agenda first.
Yes.
yeah,
Unless- Is that you, Gina?
Oh, you were looking at me, I'm like,
Do you want me to do it?
No, I don't think.
Okay.
Who is, okay,
Yeah, it's Karen.
Karen.
I don't actually have it pulled up here right now, but
Excuse me, what's the question?
Are we wrapping up item 7 now?
No, I think we
No.
ought to put on hold.
I'll leave it
Right.
open.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's kind of like we're looking at them both at the
I
same
get it.
time.
I don't happen to have the item. May I look over your shoulder?
Please do.
The service, oh, thank you, Sharon.
Yeah.
Where'd mine go?
We held a public hearing on March 1st, you may recall, to consider a service improvement to add half-hourly service to Route 61, which currently runs hourly. And the proposal that has been included in the assumptions for the budget is that we would implement that proposal with the half-hourly service running between 9:17 a.m. and 5:35 p.m. The fiscal impact of that improvement is $303,123 annual additional cost. So you have the choice of implementing this service improvement or not implementing this service improvement. If you choose to implement it, it would be effective July 3rd.
And is, this cost is incorporated into the budget?
Yes, it has been.
Cindy?
I think anytime we can increase headways on routes is a good thing. I mean, we have data that shows that our most traveled routes, I think 21 and 22, are those rapid routes. And I think the more that we move towards trying to get more of the routes at shorter headways, I think is going to go towards increasing ridership.
Other comments? Elliot?
I'll make mine really short. Can you hear me okay? I think the whole point here is to take our transit system, in the right direction, and that is to lower our headways. And when I was visiting with some of the folks around the country, other board members, I'm like, yeah, we got an hour, and they're like, how do you function? And that's a challenge, and it's a challenge that we all know about, and it's a challenge that today we get to try to do something about. So I'm in full support of this, and the effects on the budget. I hope I get to contemplate the effects of changes like this to our budget time and time again on my time here on the board, because that means our service is getting better and we're better serving our riders. And I think we're going to be surprised, because this is something that we haven't historically had, right? This is about the first half-hour headways.
No, actually, our service, the routes that are numbered 40s,
Right.
like the 41, the 47, the 42, those are all half-hour.
They all have half-hour now.
Yes. Those that are numbered in the 60s, 61, 62 have hourly service.
Perfect. So this is something that those customers, some of them have been accustomed to, and then they go to another route, and now it's an hour. So I know when I was waiting for the bus, and do wait for the bus, it's like you look at your clock and go, when is it going to come again? And it was nice to be in San Antonio and realize it was like 10 minutes. 10 minutes is another bus. So I am full support of this, and I think we heard today from Aaron, when we make changes like this, its effect on our budget, so to speak, can be minimal the first year as this becomes a trial. And I'm glad to hear that from him, and I look for other board members to support this as well, and then also how its effect on the budget, and take all those things into consideration.
Is that a motion?
I'll make the motion to approve the service change.
I'll second.
Okay. Any other discussion? No? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. Go to the next, the fare increase, is that Steve?
Yeah, that's what I'll make the presentation for. Thank you. Fare adjustments, as we discussed in the proposed budgets for fiscal year 2016-17, are based on the assumption that we will, first of all, not make the fare ratio, and therefore needed to increase fares in order to meet the ratio. Number two, as it was brought up earlier, was that there is a cost increase related to the service. The service itself, for additional headways, will cost over $300,000. This particular change would actually generate $366,500 or $158 estimate. However, we do believe that it will lose 4% in the transition from the ridership. That's just what we calculated to the numbers. So the end result is it's a net positive gain in terms of revenue. However, it will reduce the number of rides we will have. Question mark. We're not sure if that's going to be a real loss or not. All we can do is we know that the fares will go up. We know we can estimate how much they will go up by, but we don't know what the negative would be in terms of loss of ridership.
Typically, that loss of ridership, some of it is recovered over time, isn't it, when the new rate is accepted?
Yeah. Yeah, and
or they
our
become accustomed to the new rate.
Our ridership is predominantly a captive ridership. You know, people use the vehicle, use our buses as a regular practice, and if it goes up somewhat, it's still something that they need to account for, and because the value of the transit system as it relates to the community has to be valued, and so these are the kinds of things we go through.
Cindy?
What type of, is there modeling that is done to figure out what the proposed or estimated ridership is going to be? And again, talking to some people in San Antonio, is the modeling outdated, or I'm sure Emory, it's probably a question that...
There's what they call elasticity model that they've used for many years as the basis to determine what the effect will be on ridership, and that's where we came up with the 4%.
I'm really pleased to see that we're really getting our money out of that San Antonio trip tonight. No, I you know, those programs are excellent. You know, we get out and see a lot of their activities.
It's good network.
Comments? Any other comments on our fare increase, Jim?
What is the procedure of adding a 7-day pass?
We can adopt it.
We would need to figure out how to price it, whether you want it to be discounted or full 7-day fare.
Nobody is living in a bubble, so when you extend routes, you have increased fares. Annually, you have increased expenses that you've got to hit, okay? And we've got to continue to work on maintaining our fare box ratios. As we do that, I would like to see us help our riders to not be overly burdened with what has to happen. So if we can do a 7-day pass, which gives them an option. If a 31-day express pass costs $60 and a 15, let's just do that, 31-day pass costs $42 and a 15-day pass is $28. Then if we can help them get there with a 7-day pass, and I think that's to our benefit to helping our customers ride the bus. See what I'm saying? So I think it's something we need to take a look at. I have no problem with the increased fares based on our increased operating expenses. We're not slamming anybody, and we have ways for them to buy reduced fares, provided they have the money to buy the fare. So if you don't have the money to buy the 30-day fare, then you got the 15. If you don't have the money to buy the 15, then maybe you can buy the 7. See what I'm saying? So,
Yep.
or maybe we buy an 8-day fare. You know, see what I'm saying? I mean, whatever analysis we take a look at, maybe it's an 8-day fare that we need to take a look at.
Would be
That kind of thing.
Cindy?
I think right now, we increased the fare in September or October?
August.
In August? I think it's a little soon to do another fare increase. I know when we did increase it in August, that we did say that if there was a possibility of the increase, another increase in the near future. I didn't think it was going to be less than a year. Also, the fare box ratio now without the increase is the 18.7. I think from hearing from Mr. Hakimi, I think that was well within the ratio of what they felt was acceptable in doing changes as far as adding this 30-minute headway.
To kind of piggyback off that comment, that's one of the reasons why the majority of the reasons why we have Aaron here. They're sort of the keepers of these funds, right? And on a no change transit district, he's going to hold us. The state holds us to that 20%. Obviously, today he made the case that he considers a change of headways, an increased headways, or should we say a decrease or increase in frequency, as a route service change that is, to have the ability to then, and I picked this up what he said. He said, just because you're below 20, we still consider you compliant. It's not that you're below the fare box recovery ratio. It's that when you do a change and your overall system's below 20, but yet you had a change, you will be compliant with the fare box recovery ratio for a period of a year as that service gets up and going. So so maybe I'll ask this next question. So if we have a deficit of 537,897 is what we'd be projecting if we did not raise the fares, we would still get that 537 from the TDA, correct?
Sure.
So
operating expenses are covered.
so we would be, our operating expenses would be covered. So our risk was that if in some cases, let's say it was a normal year and we didn't make any changes, we had a deficit of $537,000 FTA. They could come next year and say, hey guys, we're not going to give you that extra $500,000 because you didn't meet your recovery ratio. So we're going to withhold that money until you make changes, i.e. you have to raise your fare, you have to lower your service, or a combination, both, the two, to lower your total expenses by 537. What they told us tonight was we don't have to do that if we make a change that is consistent with a service or route change. That's what I heard tonight. So, I would be, I'd like to take them at their word. That we would not be penalized, and for the sake of the riders, and for the sake of, let's see if we can, maybe we'll outperform this. Maybe that new route, the right is we were going to lose 4%, maybe we gain 4%, and we don't have quite as big as. I'd like to look on the optimistic side. So, I'm at this point not in support of changing the fare structure for those two reasons, and I'd be curious if other board members see it the same way, or if I'm missing something in the picture.
Jim?
I think we have to be careful when we increase our fees. And it seems to me that it would be better to do small increases than to wait to where we have to do a big increase. The last time we increased it, it had been quite a time period since the previous increase. Was
5
that
years.
correct? Yeah. So, I'm looking at these passes. As we go forward, whatever we do, I think we need to pay real close attention to how much is going up, how quickly it goes up, and to keep in mind that we do our customers a disservice by waiting too long to move the price in smaller increments to help them with their cost of living adjustments that they have to make because of our cost of operations adjustments that we have to make as well. So that's my only concern.
In your estimation, Jim, this is kind of a point of clarification. Did you feel that, because I understand your point, did you feel that the 25%, that the 25-cent raise from 125 to 150 was too big of increase, or this proposed change is 15 cents?
Yeah, no, I thought it was a good small step.
Gotcha.
Because it had been so long.
Right.
Okay? If we moved it 5 cents a year, if that's, we could take a look, at the 40,000 foot level or 100,000 foot level and see, 7 to 10 years into the future and see where we need to be and do that, a penny at a time, a nickel at a time to get us there. I think that is to everybody's benefit. Now, when we made these adjustments, we had people come and speak in the public that said it's real difficult. You're making it difficult on us for the correct change. That's why I wanted to know about the debit card. Because if we can use a debit card or a refillable card of our own, then it won't make a big difference as to, the nickels dimes kind of thing. But having ridden the bus for 2 years when I lived in Hawaii, getting the correct change wasn't always available, so when I put $1 in there for a 50-cent ride, that was somebody else's 50 cents that I paid for. So I understand that. So I think the combination of moving the increases a little bit at a time is better than something happening and we got to go big. And it only makes sense if we can use a refillable card or a debit card so that there isn't the change problem. That's it.
I'm curious about that point. In general terms, how many riders use cards versus actual cash on the vehicle? Is it 50-50? Or?
Actually, I think the swipe cards, especially like the 31-day pass, if I'm looking right now at the sales schedule here and give you some indication of how well we're doing, the 31-day pass by far produces most of the revenue besides just the cash fares. Okay, it is by far the biggest seller.
Is it?
Yeah.
A lot. I know some organizations I mentioned, Garden Pathway, they actually purchase and purchase those cards, right? Is that where a lot of that comes from?
Yes.
These security organizations?
They have, some of the county agencies like return to work agencies, they get
KFC?
full monthly passes.
Actually. Okay. Yeah, last year, to your point, Cindy, last year we did, in fare increase, we did come to an understanding, or as Jim was explaining, it would be better to break increases into smaller increments than wait 3 or 4 or 5 years. Your point, as I heard it, is this is actually less than a year, the increase being made. Are you suggesting waiting a couple of months, or are you, what's your position?
I would like to see how this new route performs before we increase the fare. I don't know if that, I guess we can increase it whenever we want. We don't have to wait for another budget to go around, right? So, I mean, that's what I would say. And if like Mr. Baldwin, I also think that it shouldn't be a big jump all at one time. And the change is a big, and coming up with 165 is, you're gonna end up giving 175. So you're gonna be given, it's easier, for you to get the quarters in there than it is, I think, ever to get the dimes and the nickels. But I just think it's too soon for us to have the rate increase, the fare increase right now, and maybe we wait to see how this route performs.
How long a time period?
What are you suggesting?
I don't know, Emery, how long does it take for us to kind of gauge where we think a route is going, or I mean, I know with the new AVL system, when we get data like that, so would it be 60 days, 90 days?
Are you talking about a ridership change based on if the fares went up?
Ridership change as far as making this new route 30-minute headway now.
Yeah, normally with a new change like that, you want to give it usually at least 6 months to a year before you can really see what the ridership change will be, because it'll take time for people to hear about it and get used to it. So probably you want to look at a period, I'd say.
So 6 months would put us almost at the November. I would like for us to at least go into October, November. That would be a little bit more than a year than our last fare increase.
Question, excuse me.
No.
Emery, question to your point. If you're reducing if you're actually improving, this is an improvement to the system, to the route. Is that correct? I mean, your service is more. You're increasing the number of the service.
Yes.
So is there? Do you apply that same algorithm to that improvement? I don't see why you would expect a negative on that, or do you?
Not on the ridership. We would expect an increase on the ridership.
Okay, you are expecting an increase.
But keep in mind if you're improving the headways on a route, for example, you're going from hourly to half hour, so the quantity of service you're doubling, but it's unlikely that you will double the revenue and the ridership. Certainly, you're going to get more people, but
you're
I
not.
wish we would double the ridership, but I doubt that would happen.
But you're not expecting a decrease in this case.
Oh no, definitely no.
Worst case scenario is the same riders.
Yeah, the intention of doing this improvement is to increase ridership.
Yeah, understand. And so.
But the fare proposal
would impact on that.
It may. You don't really know if it will or not. And there needs to be a way to pay for that service in the first year while that ridership is building. It could take 2 or 3 years before the ridership, and I don't know if you know, Emery, what the fare box recovery ratio for this particular route is. Because that's the other way to look at it, is you want to hit that 20% on a route by route basis. Some routes actually exceed that. Many of them are below that and are subsidized by the more successful routes. So there's the question of how do you pay for this improvement, and Sure, you can take it out of reserves, but I would recommend against funding ongoing operating expenses from reserves.
Well, to Elliot's point, as I understand it, is it a 1-year delay on getting reimbursed or those increased expenses? Because you said all expenses are covered by TDA, right?
Yeah, I mean, right now, we can afford to operate with, but in this particular year, we also are going into a deficit because of the need for capital projects. Okay, so operationally, we can be covered. We'll have to go to our capital. Let's go to our capital reserve for the other capital projects. Okay, on that sheet when I showed you on page 2.
Using the funds that are going to be, have a death date on them first.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we have a,
But we're
Okay.
going to be able to make our full TDA claim, correct? And we're not going to be at risk for next year's claim.
That's correct.
That's correct.
So-
I would guess, yeah.
That's what we've heard. So a lot of our decisions are, at least, every month we ask, how are we meeting our fare box recovery ratio? And every month we're really great. I mean, for current cog, we meet our 20%. We're pretty darn close.
Yeah.
And so we would be still meeting that same requirement. We would still meet our fare box recovery ratio. It would be that they would allow us to meet a lower threshold.
They would exclude the $300,000 off of that and say that's cost of doing the service. And then the presumption is that you will recover your regular, your normal revenues out of your fare box. We cover the 20%.
I just want to make sure that I am taking a position
Yeah.
I fully understand the,
Okay.
the ramifications. So there's not really a negative to us for not pulling more, raising the rate, other than you just don't have that extra money to
Well,
go.
Karen said, yeah, that extra $300,000 for the operating of this particular year
Right.
will come out of those reserves.
Gotcha.
Okay.
I heard some things from riders when we had our hearing, and it was interesting. They said, we make choices on a daily basis. A bus goes by, we just need a ride from here to there, and yet we decide not to get on the bus. We decide to walk. And then I heard a few people say this. When you guys raise the rates from 125 to 150, we decided we'd walk a little bit further instead of taking the bus. We're missing out on this, and so I'm just worried that we lost 8% from last year, and I know the mix of why we lost 8% is up for debate, but built into there is some elasticity of the riders, and we and I agree with Cindy, about giving enough time. I think we've heard from Emery, so I think if you give this 6 months or a year to flush itself out, I would feel better. At least I would feel better when we go and I talk to a rider and say, listen, guys, we tried it for a year or 6 months. We just couldn't make it, and we didn't it wasn't our snap judgment to just raise the rates and throw this on you. I'm not saying that's what we're doing, but I just don't want that to be the perception from our riders. And so that's, I think, I'd like to give us a shot, think the best, and hope we can make it. That's my opinion.
So what is do we need?
what we have on the table is as I understand, you want to put that in form of a
Yeah,
motion
do
to
we make a
extend?
motion to not accept the fare increase, or do we make the motion to accept the fare increase and then either yes or no vote it, or how do we?
Well, you would need, if you wanted to adopt the fare increase, you'd do that by way of a motion. If nobody wants to make a motion to adopt the fare increase, then no action is really required unless you want to make a record of it. But you do not need to make a motion to not adopt it.
However, staff would then desire direction from the board to amend the assumptions in the budget proposal to remove the assumption that the fare increase was approved.
So that would be the,
But the budget item's still up for discussion. right
Yes.
now, right?
Is it up for discussion or you're
We haven't voted on it.
recommending extension? Or is that two different actions?
I think it's two different.
What's that? To hold off on the fare increase?
Yeah, to extend the implementation date.
I mean, you don't, if you're not gonna take any action on the fare adjustments, you do not need a motion. If you want to make a motion to extend it for 6 months, or if you don't make any motion, then you could come back and reevaluate, reanalyze a fare increase whenever you feel it's appropriate,
And we don't need a motion for that.
not in my opinion.
Okay.
I would like us to go on record. We had a public hearing, and I watched on the news the next morning. I would like us to take some resoluting action, whether that be for or against that, so that we can let the public know that we have done a lot of work and we decided one way or another. I think the public deserves to have that. And if we want to say, not at this time, but we will reevaluate it in 6 months when we make these route changes, that's okay too, I think.
What is the route change?
So
When?
July 3rd.
July 3rd. Yeah, sorry. I make a motion to reject the fare increase, but to revisit a possible fare increase after the route change has been implemented for 6 months.
Can I make an amendment to that motion, please?
Those
Would you consider a 5-month as opposed to 6?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. So you're amending your motion?
I will amend my motion.
Okay.
a second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion approved. Motion carried. Thank you. I believe does that conclude our review of our budget? Steve, is there anything else?
If we want it to be, there's a lot of details.
I'd like to hear the marketing detail.
Okay. Let's go for it.
That is tab number 9. Would you like me to go through it entirely, or pretty much hit the high points of kind of what we have planned? Okay. Under contract services, I've asked for a budget of $80,000, $2,000 for our web hosting. We have some miscellaneous things. We are looking at redesigning the website this year at $20,000. And we are looking at, we have in the past been doing broad-based customer community surveys about every 3 years. And we would like to step that up and do one this coming year and look at doing them on a yearly basis. So I've allocated $50,000 for a broad-based customer community survey. And then we are also going to be partnering with operations on a secret shopper project with the customer service representatives. Schedules and maps, you'll see under bus books and maps, $55,000. $45,000 of that is to print 100,000 books this next year. And then we also have transit tubes at various stops that have maps in them, about $10,000 for inserts. The only other big one before we get into advertising is staff training. I've proposed $8,000 because we have a staff member who is looking to retire, and we may have to train someone to take that position, and it's an extensive position. Under advertising, I'm proposing $200,000, and that would include just over $100,000 for advertising, $12,000 to video the board meetings. We'd like to start an advisory council that would meet quarterly, would be about 20 persons on the advisory council. I'll be bringing the proposed bylaws and application to the marketing committee before bringing that to the board. We're looking at doing sponsorships. That was referenced a little earlier. What we are looking at doing is getting sponsorships for free fares for veterans by going out to local companies and asking them to make a donation or to a sponsorship, and then they would get side of the bus, flags, the whole 9 yards with their, thank you to whoever. We're also looking at possible sponsorships to extend service on New Year's Eve to 2 a.m. And I have allocated $5,000 as a cost to for those, because we have to do the buses, we've got to produce materials, etc. $20,000 for give.
Excuse me, Gina.
Yes.
On the sponsorship, let's see. It seems as though I have two questions. One is the amount of sponsorship you achieve, should that not be identified as revenue in the marketing department?
It would.
Actual revenue?
Yes, it would be identified as revenue, but there's a cost to produce that revenue.
But
So
I
this
don't
is
see a projection on revenue here.
because we only do expenses on this side. That would be a projection through the revenue side, but we really hadn't gotten approval
I understand.
for
I
this
understand.
project, so we hasn't.
What I'm suggesting is that as a department picture, a picture of department performance, I mean, you tell me if this makes sense or not, Steve, but we show sponsorship as a line item as revenue.
Yes.
And I'm not, how you account for that, but it seems, what I'm interested in is seeing performance, and that would indicate performance. on
Suggestion
achievement.
might be that when Gina prepares this information, that she has estimated revenue
Yes.
of this
Right.
much money
Right.
Exactly.
brought forth with this particular project.
Right.
That might be more accurate for you.
Right, rather than just showing the expense for the initiative, you show projected, estimated revenue, and then that would help us make a decision on the expenditure of the expense. The other point is, in one of our earlier discussions in the marketing committee, I raised a question, I'll raise it again. Sponsorship is a significant level of effort, more than what you've been working on. I want to make sure, and let me kind of start over. This is a whole new initiative, a whole new effort. Right, I want to make sure that you're giving it the full effort, rather than trying to shortcut it and cut costs. In other words, do you need people to do this? Because it's a significant effort. If you want to be successful, you're going to have to invest in it a bit, maybe a bit more than what you're suggesting here. Perhaps an additional person or someone to focus on that effort. I'm not telling you how to run your department and that sort of thing, but I'm sharing some experience. If you're going to go after sponsors, go after it wholeheartedly, 100% effort, and request the expense for that if there's expense necessary.
And actually, I appreciate that you're recognizing that we're looking at additional work, and I think at this point, one of the things that I have in my budget that I did not go over is an intern position. So part of what we're looking at is moving some work to that intern, so that we would have some time to do this. And we are starting this year on a smaller scale. We're looking at veterans, and we're looking at the New Year's, If things go well, then it's very possible that we would look at others, and at that point, we would come back, possibly come back and renegotiate.
Okay, well, just to kind of drill in the point, the idea behind specifying or coming up with a projection or an estimate for this initiative is, as I said, to monitor the performance. It's a metric.
Right.
It's simple. Back to the idea of metrics. Okay, so we'd like to see something along those lines.
We do not typically classify revenue by department.
I understand. Is that,
Would you like us to start doing that?
I actually would like to start seeing something like that. If I'm not talking about overburdening the operation here, but in order for us to evaluate and make assessments and helping make decisions, what do we use for
Well, we show, for example, with the advertising revenue, we have a line item that details the advertising revenue. So we could have a line item that details the sponsorships, but it would not actually be in a revenue budget assigned to marketing. It would just be in the overall financial report.
Well, that's fine, as long as.
Does that satisfy
as
your
long
need
as
for
it's
the
somewhere.
information?
Yeah, this is a new initiative, a new bit of work, and yeah.
Okay.
The accounting part of it, no liassi. I mean, it doesn't matter. Yeah. But it should be in the report somewhere. Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And I think we can make that report as we move
Okay.
forward. We can,
Well, let me ask you this way. Wouldn't it be useful to you to have a target and move towards that target, and your energies and your team would be energized by, hey, we have this target and we're striving for it, rather than not having a target?
actually internally, we do have targets, and we
Okay.
absolutely would do that.
Okay.
So,
Well, share
yes.
it with us.
So, yes, and I think it's something that we do anyway. It's just
Okay.
a matter of
Okay.
sharing it with the
Thank
board,
you.
absolutely.
Thank you.
Purchasing, going down continuing, giveaways, Youth Pass project, we have allocated $16,000 for that. And I would tell you that in terms of the Youth Pass, summer Youth Pass, I do look at what we spent in marketing and what we bring in. And then annual report, $12,000, and then social media, $5,000. We're looking at focusing more on social media in order to boost your boost your reach. You can pay to have your posts boosted, and we are looking at doing that this year. Not every post, but when we post, for example, Earth Month, we would want to boost that. When we post, certainly the veterans, because really, not only is the sponsorship a way to bring in some more revenue and to help our veterans, but I think that's going to be a great public relations. We're looking at, once it's approved, we're looking at going to the Kern County Veterans Association, Dick Taylor, partnering with them to do a big event. A couple buses with flags all over them. I mean, that's just good public relations as well. And then in terms of printing, $45,000, and that's really a lot of our employee newsletters, brochures, banners, customer newsletters, events, and just miscellaneous printing. What we are looking at doing this year is focusing more on public image rather than marketing for ridership. So, and you brought this up at the last meeting, and I was thinking, oh, we're already looking at that. We're on the same page. So maybe reducing some of our television and our radio and going to what are called advertorials in the newspaper. where it's a half page or a full page ad, but it's also a editorial, so that we would run columns, so we would run stories about what we're doing, not just in your typical ad, so that we're getting information out, because the decision makers, the community that we want to reach, do read the newspaper. Not everyone is reading the newspaper these days, but they are. As I said, also boosting social media, and we have some other initiatives for next year. That and actually it was a major priority for the board to improve community awareness and improve community perception of us, and so that's what we would be looking at. The sponsorships, some more events. We're looking at doing a food distribution. We've done food collection. Now we're looking at doing a food distribution with the food bank, the veterans, free fairs for veterans, and New Year's Eve, a lot of those kinds of. So we're going to be looking at opportunities to partner and to improve our community and improve the community's perception of GET.
Got a question about the veterans. I think that's a great. I think supporting the veterans. I mean, that's there's no higher calling than that. There's two really nice projects in downtown Bakersfield. One is on 20th Street, and the other one's being built. It's kind of more of a senior housing on 20th Street between 20th and 19th. It's 20th, 19th. Anyways, that downtown area, and it's by the new courthouse.
Mm-hmm.
I would like for us to propose maybe putting a stop over there. We've got a lot of folks that are going to be in that area. It might be interesting to see if we can put a stop over there. Do we have anything that's even close? I think there's probably some on Union Avenue stops.
No, we go down. That would be about a block, aren't we?
Yeah.
Don't we stop at Central Park?
We stop at Central Park?
Yeah.
We don't
Okay.
stop at the park, but that Route 43 operates on
At Q
21st and Q.
Right. So
21st
21st, which is
and Q.
about a block and a half
Yeah, that's.
away. Yeah.
Yeah, I just we got a lot of folks in wheelchairs and guys can't get around. Anyways, I just think that's a market we gotta. There's a lot of captured people there, so that's all. Thank you.
Exactly.
Anything else, Jim?
So on tab 3, page 1, the advertising line, the revenue and expenses. Can you detail that a little bit?
The advertising revenue. That's
Or-
the exterior. That's the exterior bus advertising.
This is revenue exterior bus,
Yes.
Yes.
and this line here on expenses.
Is partially Gina's budget, and partially other advertising that we do, such as legal notices, recruitment notices, those kinds of things.
So this part of her budget is involved, is in that?
Yes.
How much money, revenue do we get in the summertime for student passes?
I don't know right off the top of my head, but it's reported in the financial statements each month.
Just a swag, do you have
I'm
any
gonna
idea?
say, maybe, was it 35?
Yeah, it should be in here.
Is it in this, is it in the packet here, in our thing here?
Yeah, $18,000.
For, per month,
No, for 2020.
or for the whole summer? Or for the whole year?
But we only run it 3 years.
3
For
months.
the 3 months, $17,000?
14,445. That was the budget in actual says here is 14,892.
Where are
On this
you? Where is
page.
that?
Page number 1 of 3 on this fair and other
Tab
revenue.
4.
Tab 4.
That might be a great sponsorship.
Yeah. Really.
I mean, that's the kind of thing that if you got sponsored, that we could put in our piece in the paper and on the
Right,
website, et
right.
cetera. You know, Billy Bob and Get are putting together this program so students can have this
Right.
bus pass.
Yeah, I think you're right. We haven't thought about that one, but I think that's a great idea.
And then, as we build on the sponsorships,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe there's one for veterans, and maybe there's one for the elderly, and maybe there's one for the disabled. That, you know,
Mm-hmm.
month of March is Disability Awareness Month. Month of April is Autism Awareness Month. I mean, just different things.
Mhm.
That as we build those things, there might be a good way that we can hit those rascals with them.
And-
Just an idea.
And honestly, you know, as everyone is out in the community, when you come across businesses and business owners, you know,
Yeah.
keep in mind.
We're free employees, right? We're free
Yeah,
marketing.
yeah, you can do that and say, hey, have you ever thought being on the side of a bus and doing a sponsorship for? And so, yeah, absolutely.
And how much does it cost to wrap a bus?
I'm not sure what it costs to completely wrap a bus. One side is $1,600. That's the cost. That's not the design cost. That would be an additional. But we just did the Earth Day buses, and we actually, when we have a contract with Lamar, they give us a $5,000 allowance. So we start off with $5,000 to spend, which we did spend over that this year. So the Earth Day buses were $1,500 a piece for one side. So I'm guessing about double that to wrap.
I think another sponsor thing, you know, you talk about the IKEA, right? IKEA is buying a lot of our passes. They're sponsoring our route for an extra such and such. We'll put IKEA on the bus that drives to IKEA every day.
Or to Hone, or whoever else.
Exactly, exactly.
Even put their name on the route, call it the IKEA route rather than
Hey,
numbers.
and you'd be surprised. There were some folks
Yeah.
that did this.
They're all over the country doing that. Companies, people are putting their names on the routes. We heard that in Phoenix, right?
Right, we have not done that as yet, but particularly as we look at the acquisition of some new buses, there's an absolute opportunity to do that. And honestly, Tejon Ranch, not IKEA, but Tejon Ranch was one of the ones that I thought we should go to for the veterans.
There is some risk.
Maybe they can pay the 20%. That's their sponsorship for the life of that bus, 12 years. If you pay our 20% on matching funds, we'll put your name on that sucker for 12 years.
I like it. That's my kind of sponsorship.
Right.
Well, speaking of Tejon, our new board member will be here, not
Next
week,
Tuesday.
next Tuesday. He's at his own board meeting today and tomorrow, or the last couple of days. But he's gone through the orientation and ready to go. All right. Thank you, Gina. Really appreciate the session. Is there anything else, any other sections of the budget you want to drill down into?
I just had one question. I don't know where I saw it now, but it said planner and associate planner, so one and one. I'm assuming it's Emery, and is that associate planner a new
That actually is a new position. We currently have an intern, and we would like to upgrade that to a full-time.
Great, that's what I was
Position.
wondering, if we were moving towards, I think would be a great asset to the transit district, and I think he's got passion for transit and our community, so good things.
We don't have a conflict.
Brother?
I didn't see in the capital budget about our solar project. Is that off?
No, it's in there.
That's-
We're already funded for it.
We're already funded for
We're
that?
already, yeah, we're actually working on specs now.
Oh, great, great.
Okay.
Anything else? Are we finished with the budget? Thank you. Steve, excellent, excellent work. The entire
Thank
team.
everybody.
We know
Yeah,
that.
this is not an individual effort. This is a lot of sweat and blood right now.
Mr. Chair, can I just make a comment?
Yes.
The next steps are staff will go back and make revisions based on the direction that the board has given tonight. We will bring the proposed budget back at the first meeting in June for a public hearing on the budget. And then we'll bring it back at the second meeting in June for action to adopt the budget.
Thank you. We have a couple of more items to wrap up our meeting. Current Council of Governments report. That'll be me. I sat in for Cindy in the last meeting, the current council board meeting. What I'd like to do is just have Sharon send these documents out to you. Some selected information. One is current council publishes an outreach effort newsletter. And in this particular newsletter, there were 6 items in there, and 3 of them involved GET. So good work on that. You know, in terms of public image and that sort of thing, we're really moving ahead on that. There is in June, there's a business and industry roundtable meeting for the 2018 regional transportation plan, if anybody's interested in that. And by the way, the meeting was very interesting. It lasted about 15 minutes. That was a long meeting I've ever sat in on. Anyway, you could have done that meeting and gone back to your Bakersfield dinner. The presentation prior to the meeting, the meeting prior to the actual current board meeting, the workshop, the lady from Lyft gave a presentation, and Karen was there as well. And the same lady I've seen in Pasadena, and I believe she was in Phoenix as well. Lyft and Uber are really getting involved and becoming integrated with transit. And this is an excellent presentation. I'll have Sharon send it out to you. I just want to highlight the last couple of points on here. What they're looking at and what they're actually doing is creating partnerships with public transit organizations. And I believe Bob knows a lot about this as well. And there's an APTA study associated with this as well. So I'll pass this over to Sharon. She can pass this on to the scan and pass it on. That was the gist of that meeting. High-speed rail update, please. Karen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A number of you attended the high-speed rail meeting this morning. They were meeting here in Bakersfield. They took 3 hours of public comment on one particular item regarding the preliminarily preferred alignment through Bakersfield. They did take action to adopt a resolution saying that the locally developed alignment, which is the UP alignment going through our property, is the preliminarily approved alignment.
Preferred. I'm sorry.
Yes,
Not
I'm
approved,
sorry,
preferred.
preliminarily preferred alignment, and they added a clause to the resolution stating that Even though this was the preliminary preferred alignment, they would be continuing to look at all alignments and would not make a final decision until all the work had been completed. So, for whatever that's worth, I don't think we can take it to the bank yet, but we're a step closer to knowing what the alignment might be.
May I add to your report one point? There's a what's it term? Undercurrent discussion going on about the F Street alignment. Excuse me. The impact, and it was kind of not presented a lot of detail this morning. However, there's the one thing that could and would thwart the F Street alignment is the environmental justice aspect of the F Street, and that means that that particular alignment will have a much greater negative impact on the disadvantaged communities going through. I'm not sure where it is. It's through the Union. Old Town Kern. So that there's some, and Bob, I don't know if you, well, no, we don't need to delve into that. I'm just sharing some information that was presented this morning, but not in much detail. The one major negative about the F Street alignment is the environmental justice impact on the disadvantaged communities. Okay, board committee reports. I think we covered the admin and finance. Anything else to add on that, Jim?
Yeah.
Facilities and equipment. We have a report from.
I do. I met with Director Bielli last week. After I got back from San Antonio, we took up a few items. The one of most, I think, important note and near and dear to our heart is a transit station at CSUB. There was a proposal by staff to move forward with a particular company to help design that transit center, and I asked a few questions, and that was, after going and seeing what San Antonio was able to do, is there something that's more appropriate? Can we expand the service? And something I took away from our meeting the other day, last week, was that really a driver in our transit center at CSUB is CSUB. And while we may want to do something, more substantial, they are very resistant to that. And the question in my mind was why? Have we not presented it correctly? Is there a stigma? How do we try to do the very best job we can? And I started thinking about it as, well, do we as board members need to go talk to some board members over there? Do we know of any of the board members on CSUB's board of directors or board of regents or whatever they call, and say, hey guys, we want to do a cool project here. We have the money to do it. We would like it to be an expanded role from one. You're kind of putting us in a box, and we're really playing with our hands tied behind our back. And so anyways, I think that would be something that would be worthwhile for us as board members to do, because we can go and communicate sort of our vision, with them. So, but that being said, the board or the committee decided that staff's recommendation on moving forward. This is going to come before the full board, correct, after it's been negotiated? The contract?
Yes. You gave direction to us just to receive a proposal from her now.
Perfect. There we go. So we're going to, the full board to get to see it. But I think in the meantime, we have some work with the board members. And so, we have an opportunity to do something really cool over there. We need to help get the students involved, help get the board members involved, and really make it part of their community. Our BC Transit Station is really cool, but I think there's a higher profile that we can take to that particular transit stop. The two paratransit vehicles, we have a recommendation from staff to buy 2 new paratransit vehicles. We said go for it. We need some new, those are our Get a Left buses. And then 2 commuter buses for the route down to Hone Ranch. The only issue that I heard, and I could be wrong, but our maintenance facility is not big enough to handle the big buses. So that's something we're going to have to deal with. And staff had, said it costs maybe $100,000 to retrofit our current facility to make that work. The other thing that I was curious about, and I'd like to get some opinions, we're going to get white buses. That's how we're going to order them instead of our green and blue paint scheme. I don't know if that's something that we want to change. So that was something I think you guys should think about.
What are you suggesting, the manufacturer paint them?
I don't know. There's 2 different ways. One, the manufacturer paints them; it's more expensive, or we could paint them, and the finish may not be quite the same. But we're pretty confident in your painters, correct? Is that?
Yes, we are.
It'll be better than factory.
Oh, it'll be better than that. Okay. Order 'em white. There it is. Order 'em white. Yeah. I love it.
There's no way it's coming out factory.
Okay, so that's, is that a non?
That non-issue. Hey, I have full
Okay.
confidence.
Thank you, Elliot.
Anything else?
Nope, that's all.
Thank you very much. CEO's report. Anything else, Karen?
No, I just wanted to remind you that your next meeting is only a week away. And so we'll be back here at our regular time, 5:30 on the 17th.
And Greg, our new board member, will be here with us.
Yes.
Jim, did you have a comment? Thank you.
Yeah, do we have to have that meeting?
We have a number of time-sensitive items for the agenda.
No, some that were delayed because we wanted to focus on the budget here.
Right, this meeting was actually delayed a week from last week. And then I was about to say that, Miss Jeannie. On May 26th, we will be having our health and wellness and safety fair from 10 to 3:30. And you're all invited to come out, have some barbecue with us, talk to the vendors, get your health checked out, talk to the employees, and have just an all-around good time.
What day is that again?
May 26th.
That's a Thursday, right?
Yes,
What are the times again?
10 to 3:30.
I can come after Rotary.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Thank you. Sounds great. Last year was very eventful. You were passing out awards or?
Yes, we also do safety and service awards at that event.
All right. No further business? We are adjourned.
Wait.